And so that's one thing I would have done, is made sure I would have had a consistent stream of income. I would have also made sure that I had visited more than once. I had a 4-day visit the year before, and all of a sudden I'm deciding to move there. Not recommended. Not recommended.
I've heard about this many times. You talked about it in your
Many times I've talked
podcast.
about it on my live stream. So yeah,
Yeah,
those
yeah,
those are
yeah,
those are the two
yeah,
main things that I would say, is that
yeah, yeah,
that I would have done those things differently.
yeah.
But again, had I not done that, I wouldn't have had the story to tell other people.
Right.
And I can tell you with confidence, the reason why I can tell you that is because I've done it. And so that to me, I think was
Still.
that was the best lesson, I think, for me.
Hey, what up, fam? This is Sar Levy, host of Africans in Tech, where we're building bridges and shaping futures in tech. On this episode today, got my boy Joe Hotagua. I actually been watching Joe for years, man, on some of the stuff that he's done in Sierra Leone. It's a first Sierra Leonean brother, so I'm really, really excited to have him on the episode. I pinged him last minute. I was like, hey, bro, when you come back, I think that's actually when I pinged him, when he was on his way back. I was like, hey, man, when you get a chance, I'm doing Africans in Tech podcast. I would love to have you on the episode. So, bro, I'm so happy that you're here, man. We've talked about a bunch of things off camera already, but we're going to hash a lot of those things over. But if you can, just do a brief intro of who you are, and then we'll go from there, man.
Sure. So my name is Joannis, or Joe Hotagua. I'm a Sierra Leonean American. I just spent the last 4 years living in West Africa. I spent 2+ years living in Ghana, a little over a year living in Sierra Leone. I do a little bit of everything, but my platform is called Authentic African. My goal is to help people move, visit, and invest in the continent of Africa. So that's what the platform is. And by day, I put ads on connected TV. So that's my day job, but my passion is really what I'm doing with Authentic African.
Dope, bro. Cool. So you're Sierra Leonean. Have you always thought of yourself as Sierra Leonean? And kind of what's that journey been like, bro?
It's a great question. So in the very early days, no.
Okay.
I'm 40 years old. For those who don't know, you might see the grays in the beard. When I was younger, in the late 80s, early 90s, it was just not cool to be African, right? African booty scratcher, bush boogie, whatever, all the names.
Yep.
And my mom would speak Creole a lot. And so we spent a lot of time trying to get to her to assimilate and to speak English more. Going back on it, I wish it'd be different, but at that time, that was just the way to act. That's the way we did it. So she would call me by my middle name, Bemba, which is actually a very powerful name, but at that time, I saw it as a feminine name, like Bambi or like Simba.
Gotcha.
It kind of, so I never really represented Sierra Leone as a kid growing up. And now I do it every day on my wrist, you can see.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a transformation, and it's probably been since the first time I went to Sierra Leone in 2010.
Okay.
But it really, really became something in 2017 when I started going more regularly, and I could become proud of who I am and learn more about where I come from. So yeah, I mean, and Sierra Leone has a rich history and a history that I like to share with other people. So as much as I can, I try to educate people. So in the very beginning, no, but where I am today, I'm super proud of where I'm from.
Dope, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what made you go back in 2010?
So I went for a funeral.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my aunt had passed away.
Okay.
She was one of my favorite aunts.
Yeah, sorry.
And so, yeah, I appreciate it. So, we went for her funeral, and it was the first time I had gone to a funeral for somebody I cared about.
Yeah.
And it's the first time I ever heard of the concept of legacy.
Yeah.
The fact that she had done so much for people to want to vote, and she had an impact on so many people's lives outside of herself.
Yeah.
That was the first time I ever thought about what my impact is going to be. What are people going to say when I die?
Nice.
I was about 25 years old, so before that, I always thought about wanting to make a ton of money, but with no real purpose.
Right.
And that's the first time I ever thought of purpose, was that first trip to Sierra Leone.
Dope, man. And what were you doing back then in 2010?
So I was working in the same industry now.
Okay.
Well, actually, no, I was unemployed. It was the financial crisis.
Yeah.
So I had been working in this industry, a subset of online marketing.
Okay.
But because of the financial crisis, I was unemployed. So my mother bought the ticket, and I had to pay her back. But she's a loan shark too.
Shout
She was
out, Mom.
definitely asking for that money every month. So I went to Sierra Leone, and that was probably an eye-opening experience for me, realizing that there's a world that I can probably have an impact on, and gave me, like I said, a purpose, a sense of purpose, for sure.
Dope, man. So what What was it that you were doing? You said you were unemployed, but what was it that you were doing specifically?
So I was working in online advertising, a sector of internet advertising called affiliate marketing.
Okay.
So if anybody's familiar with, if like Amazon has an affiliate program, people are pretty familiar with that, right? So if you have your own unique link on Amazon, somebody goes to your link and buys something, Amazon will pay you a percentage of that purchase. Amazon will pay you a percentage of that purchase.
Okay.
And so for a long time, for 2 years, that's what I was doing.
Okay.
I was working for a company that did that for many different bigger companies. And they were actually doing it mostly for financial services. So
Okay.
payday loans, subprime credit cards. And as you can imagine, those of you who know what happened during the financial crisis, that was a really bad business to be in.
Yeah.
Prior to it, it was great,
Yep.
but it's what caused the financial crisis. I knew little at that time. And so what ended up happening was we were all unceremoniously let go because what we were doing was perpetuating the problem and ended up causing the problem that we were dealing with at the time of the financial crisis.
Yeah.
So, but that was my first foray into the world of business
Yeah.
and in the professional world at the very least after my graduation from college. And so that's what I was doing then. I then ended up pivoting into other areas of internet marketing, but that's where I started.
Okay. Okay. Is that what you were doing at Hulu? Because that's one of the things that I saw.
Yeah, so later on, I ended up working at Hulu, a little bit different. At Hulu, what I did was I helped support the sales team with pitching brands to want to advertise on Hulu.
Gotcha.
But
Gotcha.
more specifically, it was ensuring that you and I, even though to a brand we're the same person,
Yeah.
we're both black people between the ages of, which is always their thing, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to programmatic advertising, it's making sure that based on your actions online or what you're watching,
It's like
you
personalized, so
would
it's-
personalize ads. So
gotcha,
so
gotcha.
you would
Okay.
see a specific ad, I would see a completely different ad.
Nice.
And especially because regionally we're in different places, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if I'm in New York and you're in Atlanta, I should not be seeing ads for the car company that's a car dealership that's down the street from you.
Right,
You
right.
should be, but I shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did at Hulu,
Dope.
and I actually helped grow that business from 30 million to 300 million.
Wow.
By the time that I left per year.
Nice. So
data-driven
was it a sales role? Did you get like what do you call it? Bonuses based on that?
Yeah, so it wasn't directly tied to revenue.
Okay.
There were KPIs and what's the other three-letter acronym? OKRs.
Okay.
But based on how the sales team did
Yep.
determine my bonuses that I did get.
Gotcha.
So my role wasn't directly tied. So like I didn't own the Amazon account and you have to grow Amazon from X, Y to Z.
Okay.
But I was responsible for a sector of the business that was data-driven advertising, and that's what led to me being able to get those bonuses. So, the $30 million is where it was when I started.
Yep.
And so what I did was I managed the vendors that helped us and helped unlock the revenue. So launch new products.
Nice.
So my role was actually kind of an interesting role because in one sense I was public facing. I would go with the sales team and go pitch brands with them.
Yep.
Because I've been in sales roles prior to that.
Yep.
But the other role would be to work with the engineering team to understand what we could do to kind of mimic what like Facebook and Google were doing.
Gotcha.
Because, people who were working with Hulu were used to advertising on TV
Yep.
and advertising on Facebook.
Yep.
And they were trying to figure out how to converge the two because we would say at Hulu, we're the best of TV and digital,
Yep.
but we couldn't do the things that digital could do.
Yeah.
But we were better than television in terms of targeting.
Gotcha.
And so I built out the products that allowed us to be able to do what they do on Facebook or Google. So like, for an example is, a good example is Target. Target used to want to remarket to people who recently went to Target.
Gotcha.
So they have a customer file that they can just upload to Facebook.
Yeah.
And then they can show ads to those people.
Wow.
Hulu didn't have that capability.
Yeah.
So we had a vendor that I built a relationship with, white labeled that product,
Yeah.
so that Target could then upload their files to that vendor.
Yeah.
That vendor would match against Hulu's subscribers and then send that back to us, and then we could serve ads to those people.
That's crazy. I mean, I'm thinking of all the other I know Facebook got sued for this, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking of all
Cambridge
the other,
Analytica?
Yeah.
Yes,
So I'm
yeah.
thinking of all the other cross bridge non, I guess, what's the word? Basically, you didn't volunteer for your information to be
Right,
shared to
right.
be
And not
advertised against
consenting.
it. Yeah, consenting. That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah.
So, they like to ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Yeah.
That's Facebook's move,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So Hulu had, because of the style of business that they had and the owners that they had at the
Yeah.
time, they had to be very careful with that stuff,
Right,
which is
right.
why Target wasn't able to upload that data directly to Hulu.
Okay.
In fact, what ended up happening once was Peloton.
Okay.
sent their entire customer file to Hulu.
That's
The person had to
crazy.
scrub their email. It's like a
Yeah.
whole thing because
Yeah.
you can't send that file to just an individual on
Right. Yeah.
Hulu.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like Facebook where you could just send it to Facebook.
Yeah.
So what we ended up having to do was, scrub it from the email, do all this stuff, and then later I showed Peloton how to upload it to that third party. Then that third party was able to do basically blind matching,
Yeah.
and then just send Hulu IDs back to Hulu, and then we could serve those ads to those people.
This is legit email, not like API, like legit email.
Oh, they sent everything. They sent
That's
first name, last
wild.
name, email, phone number,
That is
address.
wild.
Yeah, they sent because that's what you can upload to Facebook.
That is crazy, bro.
You can upload that to Facebook. Yeah,
Yeah,
and as
yeah,
long
yeah.
as your email
Yeah.
that you use
Yeah.
to buy from
Ties in, yeah,
them
yeah.
and it's one you use
Yeah.
for Facebook, Facebook
Yeah.
knows who you are.
Yeah, that's
and
the
generally
match.
they'll know who you are anyway just because of your name.
Yeah, yeah,
Generally. So they can kind of cross reference all of that.
Yeah.
They have all kinds of information about
That
you.
is crazy, bro.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So we were mimicking that but through a third party.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
privacy compliant, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
Right. Oof. Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
GDPR, all these other things that come in mind.
Yeah, so those things came to mind. Those things
Yeah,
came
yeah,
into play
yeah,
because of that.
yeah.
So there's the CCPA in California.
Yeah, yep, yep, yep.
And then there's GDPR in Europe.
Yep,
and
yeah,
so,
yeah, yep.
So Hulu is not in Europe, so they didn't have to follow the GDPR. But
Okay.
CCPA, Hulu is based in Santa Monica, California, so
Okay.
they did have to comply with CCPA.
So, I know we're kind of getting off topic, but
Yeah.
Hulu is only based in the U.S. What other countries do they serve?
It's U.S. only.
U.S. only.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
But they're owned by Disney, which
Okay.
is global.
Yeah,
right?
and that's what I was thinking. I always thought that Hulu was like a company that you can utilize. Well, I know they do have the IP restrictions now.
Exactly.
there, so
Yeah. So I think eventually they'll probably be international.
Yeah.
The challenge is, and not to get too deep into technical details, but content is country specific a lot of times.
Okay,
So you ever
gotcha.
notice like if you travel to another country and you're
Yeah.
trying to use
Yeah.
Instagram or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
and
yeah.
said it's not available in this country,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like that with music and it's
Yeah.
like that with television, production rights.
Gotcha,
So like an example of this is House of Cards.
okay,
Netflix sold the international rights to House of Cards to Sky.
gotcha.
Sky Network. It's like Rupert
I've heard of them.
Murdoch's.
I don't know
Yeah,
much
it's
about
Rupert
them. Yeah,
Murdoch. It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
Fox.
Okay.
In Europe, it's Rupert Murdoch's his right wing company in Europe.
Okay.
So when you watch House of Cards in Europe, you can watch it on Sky, but you couldn't watch it on Netflix
Ah,
because
okay.
they sold their international rights
Gotcha.
to Sky.
Wow.
So that kind of thing happens a ton. So for Hulu to expand outside the United States, I think they had to kind of think through whether or not they wanted to do that with all the IP that they were managing and renting.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so I think that's why they've been slow rolling the international.
Wow.
rollout.
Okay. Good info. Good info.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me kind of bring it back because I know.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
We
I can go down rabbit holes
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. But all right. So you're working at Hulu. So 2010, we kind of talked about that.
Yeah.
In 2017, you went back.
Yep.
What was like your thought process in like going back? Like why did you go back?
It's a great question. So it was I think the 15-year anniversary of my grandmother's passing.
Okay.
And I had never met her.
Okay.
But at this point in time, I now had the opportunity to go with people who had been going frequently.
Yep.
I had my aunt and uncle, and then my other aunt and uncle had been going pretty often.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could go with them because I hadn't gone from 2010 to 2017.
Okay. Okay.
One, the finances were finally there where I
Yep.
didn't have to borrow money from my mom again to go.
Yeah, yeah.
And then two,
Again, shout out to mom.
Yeah, shout out to mom. Thank you. And then two, I was able to go with people who kind of knew the lay of the land already.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so this was an opportunity to again go back to where my grandfather was from. And to take a step back, when I mentioned that the first trip there was a sense of legacy.
Yeah.
There was two parts to that. In
Okay.
Freetown, it was my aunt, and then in Bow, I got to hear more about my grandfather
Okay.
and my great uncle who were chiefs in
Dope.
Bow
Dope.
at separate times.
Yeah.
And so
Like Paramount Chiefs.
Paramount Chiefs
Okay.
of Kukua Kingdom.
Okay.
Right?
Dope, man.
So, that to me was like a really amazing feeling for people to call me Chief Bemba when I
Yeah.
would go there.
Yeah.
And so when I went back in 2017, it was an opportunity to get more of that understanding because this trip was more about Bo.
Yeah.
And going to Bo and understanding more about where I come from the paternal side.
Gotcha.
And so, it was an opportunity to honor my grandmother, who I never got a chance to meet at an age that I could remember her.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, also learn more about who I am from that side
Dope.
of the family.
That's
so yeah.
dope, man. That's dope, man. Okay. So in 2017, when you went back, like what did you take away from that I guess from a 2010 standpoint that you're like, I didn't get, but then also I guess how did that carry over to now?
It's a great question. So that 2017 trip, I think, was further validation that I need to come back more.
Dope.
So from that point, I was going twice a year. So 2018, I went twice. 2019, I went twice.
Nice.
And then at the end of 2020, I was there for 2 months straight before I moved to Ghana, right?
Wow. Wow.
So it was really the catalyst for that. It really started the process of me going back and forth. I started looking at buying land, wanted to open a bank account, start a business, get my citizenship. That 2017 trip, I found out the last day that I could have become a citizen. I didn't know that
Yeah.
until the last day that I was there because both my parents were born there. So for those of you who don't know, who were born in the United States, if both your parents were born in Sierra Leone, you can get your citizenship in Sierra Leone.
Yep.
So that's just an important thing to know. Not everybody knows that. I didn't know that until the
Very
last
important.
day.
Yep.
So I was like, all right, I already got to come back.
Yep.
So what I started doing was going celebrating my birthday there.
Yep.
So May of 2018 is right around Sierra Leone's Independence Day.
Yep.
So I go for the Independence Day, my birthday, and then I would go back in the December timeframe.
Okay.
And so that's what started that. 2017 is what started that.
Gotcha. So where did, you're probably gonna talk about this,
Yeah.
authentic African come into this like picture?
It's a great question. So I took a course on e-commerce.
Okay.
Building an e-commerce store. As I mentioned before, I'd worked in the affiliate space as a full-time job before. I tried doing affiliate stuff. What I found is that the challenge that I had is that I was always trying to drive traffic to people's products that I don't care about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got bored of trying to find the target audience and running these ads, and I never really fully got anything profitable. So I started an e-commerce store based around cannabis.
Okay.
So in 2016, that presidential election, on the ballot in California was an initiative for legalizing recreational cannabis.
Yep.
Medical cannabis had been legalized since the mid 90s in California. So this was now recreational cannabis. And the way I looked at cannabis was like how I look at the gold rush
Gotcha.
of the late 1840s.
Yeah.
In the gold rush, the people who generated income during the gold rush weren't the people digging for gold. It was the people selling tools to the people digging for gold.
Gotcha.
Right?
Nice,
So
nice,
those
yeah.
people need picks, shovels,
Yep.
sifters, wheelbarrows. And so Levi Strauss, Wells Fargo, these are all businesses that came out of that time. So in my mind, I said, okay, how can I build something like that for the cannabis industry?
Yeah.
So I wanted to create like an online head shop. You go to these head shops in New York, even though cannabis was illegal, they were tobacco shops.
Yeah.
But they sell bongs and stuff because you can smoke tobacco out of the same stuff you can smoke cannabis out of, right?
Gotcha.
So you can sell rolling paper, all that kind of stuff. So I thought, okay, why don't I just sell that online as a tobacco shop? And I was off to a good start. I paid a consultant. He really helped me get it off the ground. Made $10,000 in 3 months.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
which is really hard to do, like to start from zero and it's
yep.
really moving, right?
Yeah,
Like
yep.
it just started like really starting to take off, and then Facebook shut my ads down because it's a federally controlled substance. And so, and because I had a T-shirt that had a cannabis leaf on it,
Yeah.
they basically said you're promoting a federally illegal substance,
Gotcha.
even though I wasn't selling cannabis on the site.
Right.
But then I thought it was so clever. The name was called Forever Green Supply.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was Forever Green, right? And it was kind of a double entendre. It's for evergreen and it's forever green.
Gotcha.
So anyway, when the site got shut down, I was trying to figure out what e-commerce store I wanted to do because I knew I wanted to do e-commerce and I wanted to be working on something that I'm passionate about. And I had just recently come back from Sierra Leone in December of the previous year. This is now 2018 going into 2019.
Okay.
So in 2019 and in February, I had a fight party. I don't know who was boxing that week, whatever.
Yeah.
And so there were a bunch of people over at my house, and somebody asked me how much the mask I had on my wall, how much I would sell it for.
Yeah.
I was like probably like $60, and I bought it at Big Market for like $5, and that immediately sounded like a business idea,
Yeah.
right? Like, okay, Black Americans who are looking to find out more about who they are and where they're coming from would like to probably buy things from the continent,
Gotcha.
like ethically sourced.
Yeah.
So, after a cannabis session, about 3 a.m. in the morning, I started thinking of names: African Imports, Africa Imports, Africa Exports, and then somehow I landed on Authentic African.
Okay.
So I checked the domain; it was available.
Nice.
Checked across social media; some versions of it were available, but I could work with it.
Yeah.
And so by 4 a.m. that morning, I had a business name, and I started working on asking my friends about like a logo.
Okay.
If it's authentic, it should be a stamp.
Right.
Right? Like a stamp is like it's authentic.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what should I use? Okay, Pan-African flag colors, right? And then I thought to myself, okay, but there should be like a fist in the middle.
Yeah.
So In the end, that's how I landed on the logo,
Dope.
the idea for the business. And then of course the idea was you're gonna do an e-commerce store where you're selling products made on Africa to the diasporans or Africa in the diaspora.
Yeah.
Africans in the diaspora.
Yes.
And so that's how we came up with Authentic African. And I say we because I did ask a lot of people about many different aspects of it, and
Yeah.
I got a lot of good insight. And so that's what launched it. And I launched it on February 1st, 2019, Black
Okay.
History Month, of course.
Okay. Okay.
So I launched it February 1st, 2019. And that's when the
Dope.
Instagram page started. So instead of just focusing on posting products,
Yep.
at some point along the way, I heard Gary Vaynerchuk, the guy who wrote Crush It. And then at this time, there was a book called Jab, 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 Right Hook.
Okay.
And the idea jab, 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 right hook is just like when you think about boxers, right? They're setting somebody up, right? Jab, 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 and then right hook. And the idea is that's how you should approach social media.
Okay.
Don't just sell, sell, sell. Offer value, value, value. Then don't be afraid to sell.
Right.
And so that was the idea. So I thought, okay, why don't I start offering value? But how can I offer value to who? And so my thought process was, okay, who am I looking to get information to, and what information should I get them? So I started with the simplest thing possible, and it was just what's in my Instagram feed right now should be what I serve to them.
Gotcha.
I follow a lot of people who are focused on the advancement of Africa and the advancement of Black people abroad. And
Dope.
so I just started resharing that stuff. I hired somebody off of onlinejobs.ph, somebody in the Philippines,
Yeah.
and I just had her reposting everything from my feed. I would just basically send it to myself
Yeah.
in my Instagram inbox.
It should pick up
and
in
she
there.
would just take it and just post
Dope,
it.
dope,
And we would
yeah.
post like 5 times a day.
Nice.
And so, or 5 or 6 times a day. And so she was just reposting everything, and it grew to 30,000 within a year and a half.
Wow.
And then
Yeah.
from there, now it's 250,000 plus.
Yeah.
But of course, now I do more native content. But
Right.
the very beginning was just like, how do I get value to people? And I realized that value can come from my own personal feed. Like my
Right.
feed of following all these different people.
Yeah.
It's just, why don't I offer that in one feed?
Dope.
And so that people would start coming to my page to kind of get that kind of information.
Yeah.
And so it started to get a mind of its own, an audience of its own. People were really starting to engage with each other.
Yep.
And I drifted actually slowly away from the e-commerce store and really started focusing on that. Now, the
Gotcha.
e-commerce store is on pause for all the different reasons, which I can get into later. But for me, it was really more about how can I offer this value to people? And so I really started focusing on that. And by doing that, I started seeing the page grow and the engagement grow.
Dope. Dope. man.
And then later I moved on to YouTube when I moved to Ghana in January of 2020. I moved to Ghana, and a friend of mine who had a YouTube channel was like, "You already have this audience on Instagram, but they need to know more about you.
Gotcha.
And you should start a YouTube channel. You like to talk a lot, as you guys can see." So he's like, you like to talk a lot. I've known him since I was 14, and he had a YouTube channel for 2 years before I did. And he was
Gotcha.
like, "Listen, I think you'd be good in this medium.
Yeah.
You should get on camera more often and talk about your life. You're moving
Yeah.
to a whole nother continent." And he was in Ghana at the time.
Yeah.
So we shot a bunch of content together so I can get a kind of a feel for what it's like.
Right.
And I also had a YouTube channel back in the day, which if you guys want to look it up, it's crazy. It's kind of funny to see what kind of stuff I was doing. But but this was different because I knew I was going to take it more seriously because I'm more passionate about what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so I started the YouTube channel February 1st, 2020, right?
Yeah.
Black History Month. So I started the YouTube channel at that point in time. And so that was my main focus there, was to show my life moving. And
Yep.
then at some point showcase other people who are either entrepreneurs on the continent or other people who are going back and forth.
Gotcha. I'm gonna step it back a bit
Sure.
from a tech standpoint. When did you decide you wanted to get in tech, and were you always in tech prior to, let's say even college?
Yeah.
Was that something like I'm going to study to be affiliate marketing or do something digital?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. So so it's weird how I got there. So when I was in college, I started as a biology major freshman year.
Okay.
Academic probation at the end of my freshman year. Was not for me. It's not for me.
Yeah.
I have reading comprehension issues,
Yeah.
which I always mention it to people, and people think it's fun. It's crazy for me to say that, but I do. I have a hard time reading, so I had to find other methods of learning information. And a biology major, you have to read. This is what you have to do, and I couldn't make sense of any of it. So I had a 1.4 GPA.
Yeah.
So, but I always loved music, and at the time, my cousin was a musician.
Yeah.
And so I had been doing some research on Dame and Jay and before Diddy and Biggie, you know, and I was like, okay, I'll be your Dame to your J,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I'm Dame Dash, you're Jay-Z, you're the talent, I'm the business mind. And so I was like, you know, I'll formally get a degree in advertising and promotions,
Right.
marketing, advertising, promotions. So I did some internships my senior year.
Yep.
I interned for an artist that was signed to Atlantic Records. So I was going to Atlantic Records a couple of
Nice.
times a week. So that was
Yeah.
interesting. And that was at the time where Kevin Liles and Leor Cohen were coming out of Def Jam, and they came over to Warner Brothers Atlantic. And then also I was interning for, shout out to Daniela Cobb, who was managing Melissa Ford at the time, when Melissa
Okay.
Ford
Yeah.
was
Yep.
just coming out of her video model days.
Yep. Yep.
And so that was a really interesting experience. However, that artist that I was interning for, she got dropped from the label.
Okay.
And then at the end of my college career, my cousin decided to shift gears, didn't want to pursue music anymore.
Okay.
So I was trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And I thought I could see ahead, and I saw like the internet had killed the music industry. Right. You know, Steve Jobs was like, we're going to sell music for $1. And there was streaming services that were making music for free. And so nobody was buying CDs anymore. And this, you know, this is 2004, 2005, 2006.
Yep.
And so when I graduated, I said, okay, let me go try to work in the world of the internet. I didn't know what that meant, because at that time in school, they weren't teaching you anything about that. Right.
Yep.
So I went on an interview from Craigslist. It was a Craigslist interview,
Dope.
which is crazy to think about. And so I go in there, and there's this young Puerto Rican kid there. He's like 19. And I asked him, like, how did you get into this? And he's like, you know, he's like a child prodigy. The guy was like really smart. He was like, you know, I had heard that you can make a lot of money in this thing called affiliate advertising. And he was like, I wanted to learn from the inside and then, you know, do my own affiliate marketing. And then he told me there was a kid that used his mom's credit card, and he was making $50,000 a month from just them.
That's crazy.
He said there are many companies you can work with.
Yeah.
This one company is making $50,000. I was like, $50,000 a month?
Yeah.
I was like, this job pays $50,000 a year. I was excited about that.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I was like, all right, whatever this is, let me see what this is about.
Right.
And so it was as long as they were going to give me the job, I was in there.
Yeah.
I was sold after that discussion with him. And he was a person of color. You know, it was like,
Yeah.
I didn't expect to see somebody.
Right.
He wasn't black, but he was a person of color. I was like, you know, I didn't expect to see somebody like him in there, because everybody I met as I was walking through the interview process was not of color.
Yeah.
So meeting him, he was from the Bronx. I was like, you know what? I like this. And so that's what got me into that space. And, you know, during the financial crisis, I had bought a course called, was this How to Make a Fortune Online or something like that, some BS course. But, you know, it was $1,000, but I had gotten a tax return. After getting let go, I got my tax return. It was $2,000. So $1,000 went to paying as much of my debt as possible, because I had gone into debt.
Right.
And then another $1,000 went to buying this course.
Gotcha.
Most of the course was BS.
Yeah.
Two things in that course are things that I really found to be helpful. One was consistency on YouTube. Even though I started a YouTube channel back then and I didn't stay consistent, I now know what to do, and it's because of that course.
Gotcha.
And two, there was a thing called LinkedIn that was just starting.
Yeah.
And they were like, sign up for LinkedIn. It's like your resume and Facebook mixed. And I ended up getting a consulting gig for 2 years as an independent contractor.
Dope.
From LinkedIn.
Nice, man.
Like I in the course, it talked about getting recommendations. So I got recommendations from all my former colleagues.
Yeah.
And so this guy reached out to one of those colleagues and found out that what I said was true.
Yeah.
And that guy spoke glowingly about me. And the guy was paying me between $500 and $2,000 a week.
Wow.
From being like worth negative $70,000 to be getting paid between $500 and $2,000 a week.
Yeah.
It was like a game changer for
dope.
me. And it was all because of that LinkedIn page.
Dope.
And so I'm forever grateful to LinkedIn. And by the way, my LinkedIn, like now I maximize it.
Yeah.
You know, everything's in LinkedIn. So yeah, I mean, for me, that was kind of how I kind of made that next step, because from 2 years working with them, that started drying up. And then I started working with recruiters and talking to folks. And then I pivoted from the affiliate advertising space to another form of advertising, which is called programmatic advertising. And that's what I was explaining what I was doing at Hulu, where serving ads to people based on their online behavior, which some people might see it's annoying, but that's what keeps the internet free is ads.
Yeah.
And it's either going to be ads that aren't relevant to you or going to be ads that are relevant to you.
Right.
And by the way, one thing I also mentioned, not to be the guy that's defending programmatic advertising, but I just do this all the time with my friends. When you get junk mail, they know your first name, your last name, your email, your address. They know everything about you. They know your purchasing decisions.
Yep.
Your browser only knows what you're searching, right?
Yep.
So what we were doing was using your browser behavior, because your browser saved that information. It's called
Yep.
cookies, right?
Yep.
It's your
Yep.
cookies. And your devices, you have a device ID. So so that is what we were utilizing to make sure we were serving targeted ads, and that's what keeps the internet free, just
Yeah.
so you guys know.
Yeah.
Right? So that was why I ended up making that move, because oh, let me take a step back. So the reason why I moved into that space was this. During the financial crisis, I had no idea what was going on. I was working for a company that was giving subprime credit cards, which I should have known was a bad idea, because they had just let go of a bunch of like people at Bear Stearns and Lehman
Yeah.
Brothers and all these places, which I had no idea what it was, but I read it in the newspaper, still didn't know what I was reading. So knowing that I had gone through that, I now was trying to look around the corner to see what was coming.
Okay.
And so I had seen this company got bought by Google for $400 million. It was a company called AdMeld, and Google bought them for $400 million. And it was a company that basically did programmatic advertising. I had looked at, okay, what is programmatic advertising? I don't know what this is. So I started looking it up. And so when I saw that, I said, okay, do they have a competitor? Because maybe Yahoo buy the competitor. I had heard that Yahoo kept buying all of Google's competitors.
Right.
So I said, okay, let me go to this competitor. 30-person company, CEO was 30 years old. And so I felt like I can learn directly from him. I can get equity in this company, and I can maybe make a chunk of change when they get bought one day, or if they ever go public,
Right.
So that was that foray into programmatic advertising. It was based on the
Nice.
fact that I saw that Google had bought this other company.
Nice, nice. That's smart. I think there's not a lot of people who would have thought about that in terms of like looking at the competition, and then especially like early startups, and kind of getting your foot in the door. So that's dope,
Yeah.
man.
It was the
Yeah.
pain of losing another job that made me think that way, right? That was sometimes you have to go through
Yeah.
that to kind of learn a lesson. So that was I'm grateful for that lesson.
Yeah.
It was a tough one,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I would say I was worth negative $70,000, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the school
Yeah.
debt I had, and other
Yeah.
debt, other like credit card debt and stuff. So
Yeah.
from that, I think it changed it completely changed my outlook on like and how I approach things.
Gotcha.
Like that $2,000, that $1,000 probably would have went to Prada sneakers and something else, the earlier version of me. But after losing that job, I was
Yeah.
like, I'm going to reinvest that in myself. This is never going to happen to me again. I'm never
Dope.
going to be disposable like this, to be removed from a company ever again.
Smart,
So,
smart, man.
Yeah.
That's smart. Okay, dope, man. All right, so let's talk a bit about like I guess that sector, and then we're gonna get more into your story. Affiliate marketing, like is that still like a high in demand role now?
yeah, affiliate marketing in particular. Yeah, I mean, for example, I partner with a couple people, and I'm an affiliate of theirs, right?
Okay.
So, like, if I recommend a travel company, it's because I've used it, but also because I get paid if you purchase a travel package from them.
Yep.
Right. And so, like, or if I recommend a housing development, generally I try to work out a relationship with them where I get paid a percentage of the revenue generated from my audience purchasing that thing from them.
Gotcha.
So affiliate advertising works in so many different ways. It's not like what it was back then, where it was the wild, wild west, where people were doing all kinds of shady stuff online.
Gotcha.
It's a little bit more regulated.
Okay.
When Barack Obama got into office, he really tried to regulate a lot of that, where his whatever, FTC, whatever, the three-letter acronyms, they started regulating it a little bit more.
Gotcha.
But yeah, affiliate advertising is still quite a big business. In fact, affiliate advertising and the adult industry is really what almost always pushes the limit on technology very early on.
Oh, okay,
right? So, because those guys have the money to
Yeah,
spend
right.
on experimenting.
Yeah, and traffic. I mean,
Yeah, they have the
it's like
traffic
through the
and
roof.
yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of their advertising is affiliate.
Yeah.
And so they have the ability to be able to test that market.
Yeah.
And so so affiliate advertising is still around to this day. Yeah,
Dope,
very
dope.
much so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's say somebody that's like wants to get into like affiliate marketing, like what would you recommend as far as like a, step by step?
That's a good question. So I would say this, many of the people that I work with are psychology majors. Most of the people I work with did not study marketing. So I don't think you have to have a marketing degree. Generally, you do have to have a degree
Yeah.
of some sort.
Gotcha.
It depends on who you are in terms of your skill set. So for me, I'm a front-facing person. I like to talk. So it was okay for me to be front-facing, and I can work with brands and agencies and all these different groups that I'm trying to extract money from.
Right.
That's not a skill set that everybody has or wants to do. So if you are more organizational and operational, you can work in an operational sector.
Gotcha.
But what I generally recommend people do is, if you want to get into the tech space, work with recruitment firms. These people are paid by companies to find them talent. And they're looking for people like you because they get paid a commission
Yep.
and or a monthly fee
Yep.
to bring people like you.
Right.
So their job is to really try to get you into the door.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a relationship with anybody, I say do that. And then once you're in, because you may get a job that you don't really love,
Yeah.
make sure you bust your ass, work harder than anybody
Yep.
else
Yep.
in that office.
Yep.
You should be the first one there. It doesn't matter if you're the last one there because nobody sees you
Right.
if you're the last one there. But
Yeah.
people do notice when you're the first one there.
Yeah.
So that's number one. Number two, when you do something, do it to the best of your ability.
Yep.
And whether you think somebody's watching or not.
Right. Right.
I've gotten 4 jobs in my life based on people who I've worked with at previous organizations, not based on my credentials. Now, I was able to excel in those roles
Yeah.
because not only did I have that backing of that person, but I also busted my ass in the
Hard
beginning.
work. Hard work,
So
man.
that gave me the
Yep.
skill set and the knowledge to be able to move forward in the next thing
Yep.
with confidence.
Yep. Yep.
It also helps you in your interview process.
Yep.
You know, if you've now spent that time working on that,
Yep.
that really helps a lot. And I would also say, make sure you're paying attention to what's happening in the industry you want to get into.
Yeah. Yep.
Because when you go into that interview or when you're talking to people in this space, it's better that you know more than they do.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Because
Yep.
then they'll always see you as someone who's going to make them look good.
Right.
And the next time something comes up, they're going to say that we need somebody like Joe Hotagua, which
Yeah.
is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
The first company I ever worked at that paid me 6 figures, this is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
This guy was like, we need like a Joe Hotagua kind of person to do
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
And then the other guy was like, well, why don't we see what Joe Hotagua was up to?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
then they hit me up on LinkedIn.
Yep.
And that's
Yeah.
how I ended up getting that job. And
yeah.
I went from 75,000 to 150,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would say, and I mean, that's not everybody's experience, but what I'm saying is because I had been doing so well at that previous company and that person was a senior salesperson, he had closed Walmart and my team had helped Walmart exceed their goals. When he went to that next company, he was a C-level executive.
Yeah.
And so he could make decisions. And so it didn't even matter who else I interviewed with. He decided he wanted me because of what I did for his client Walmart at the previous company.
Gotcha.
And
yeah.
so that's the advice I would give to people. Who
Yeah,
want to get
no,
into
I mean that's great advice. I mean, so many nuggets that I know you guys are extrapolating from this, but for me, it's things that we've talked about before.
Sure.
Hard work is a constant, regardless
Oh,
of
yeah.
what
Oh, yeah.
field. Like, do not be lazy. Getting into tech is not a lazy field,
Yeah.
regardless of whether you're coding or whether you're doing more administrative or whether you're doing like management. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like, hard work is a constant, regardless of where you're at. And to me, I think your story is a testament to that. And then in terms of like the networking piece as well,
Yeah.
the last guy I talked with, I think it was Ari Rinze. He's software engineer manager, and they talked about sort of like the networking piece and how important that is. I think a lot of people like overlook that piece. Like when you're on the job, helping people out, like it's natural networking that you don't necessarily have to like put in like specific like conversations or anything like that,
Right.
like that around. But it's just the natural organic growth in you just doing what you normally do, but just helping other people out, and then they'll notice that, and then they'll contact you for references or even a job
Yep.
for XYZ, amounts.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people forget that piece, how important that is to say,
Oh, yeah.
hey, I'll do this for you, whether it's for free or whether I'll do this for you, and then we'll kind of trade off.
Yep.
And you actually doing that to the degree that I think you want to submit, submit to. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people, they'll say they'll do stuff for other individuals, but at the end of the day, they're lazy about it.
Yep.
They don't do it to like the degree that they would normally do like their own work.
Yep.
And I think that is really, really important, man. But sorry, I think you're about to.
No, I was just gonna say, there was this quote that I used to always say, and I think maybe good for the audience is, people always say it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yep, yep.
But I think it's a step further than that. It's who knows what you do well.
Yeah, yeah,
And can actually speak about it when you're not around.
Right.
Right. Because that example that I just gave, saying they need a Joe Hotagua, like I was first that came to mind. I became a verb? See, grammar is not great for me. I don't read well, right? But it doesn't matter.
You speak well, so that's fine.
Right, sure. But you guys get what I mean, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
That it became that, right? So it was, they knew that I could do the job at this other company because I did it at the other one.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And even though it was a completely different company, they knew that it was a transferable skill.
Right.
And beyond that too, my boss actually got fired when I moved to that new company.
Right.
And so I was the interim manager. And because I do what I do, and work really, really hard, we grew revenue from 7 million a quarter to just about 15 million a quarter and a half later.
Nice,
And
nice.
so instead of being the interim manager, they made me the director.
Right.
And then at that point, there was no question about whether or not I should be there. Even though he
Yeah.
brought me in because
Yeah.
of my relationship with him,
Yep.
I proved that I could do it.
Yeah.
And even though there were people there with more experience than
Yeah.
me and who were older than me,
Yeah.
I became the manager of that team.
Statistics, like numbers don't lie. Like at the end of the day,
There it
so
is.
you
There it
know,
is. Yeah.
in government contract we call it past performances. So like your
Yeah.
past performances literally shows you like you're worth it at the end
Yep.
of the day. So whether you got in through friends or whatever it is, networking, whatever it is, at the end of the day, like you're proving your value and your worth. I think
Absolutely.
oftentimes people don't understand how important that is. Like your track record really matters,
Yes.
especially in the African community.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we're gonna
Yes.
pivot right back into that. So now you are 2017
Hmm.
started Authentic African. You're working
2019.
2019. I'm sorry, 2019. In February,
Yes.
you started that, and now that's going pretty well. When did you decide to like, hey, this is like, well, when did you leave affiliate marketing, like to go to? Because I know you left your job on one of the podcasts. You
Yeah,
talked about,
so I was doing affiliate marketing
yeah,
before I moved to programmatic advertising. So
yep,
that was from 2008
yep.
until 2011.
Okay,
And so 2010, 2011, that's when I moved into the programmatic advertising space.
yep,
I did that at a couple of companies and then ended up working at Hulu. I was at
yep.
Hulu for 4 years, 2016 to 2020.
Okay, so 2020 is when you
Is when I left
left.
Hulu. So I
Okay,
left
okay,
Hulu in January of 2020.
okay,
2019, I started thinking about the continent of Africa more. Right,
okay.
I'd been going a few times, and
Yep.
and I realized that I now had a skill set and a track record that I could apply to consulting to companies on the continent.
Gotcha.
And since my goal has been and continues to be wanting to move into the space of taking high net worth individuals' funds and deploying that capital on the continent of Africa
Yeah.
in a responsible way, I do eventually want to start my own VC firm.
Nice.
And
Nice, man.
so I just thought, okay, let me just start by just advising startups,
Okay.
right? And so I was advising two startups, one in Nigeria, one in Ghana.
Okay.
And in December of 2019, I happened to go to Ghana for the year of return.
Okay.
And so, let me take a step back. In May of 2019, I had gone to Sierra Leone for the annual birthday trip. And while I was there, a friend of mine, her boss had a side business where she was opening up a resort on the beach.
Okay.
And so there was just like, oh, for your birthday, let's just go to the resort for that
What's
weekend.
the name of the resort? If you remember, no worries. I was just thinking.
I can't even remember what the name
No,
of the
no, no,
resort is. I
no
can't
worries, no
remember
worries.
the
Yeah, no
resort.
worries, no worries.
So we go to this resort, and it's like a soft launch. So,
Yeah.
they're just kind of testing it out. And
Yeah.
while we're there, we all sit down at the table and we start talking about what we're doing at
Okay.
work.
Okay.
And, Sierra Leone is a country of NGOs, right? Nonprofits and NGOs. But
Yeah.
these people
Yeah.
are really doing good
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
One person's working on the emergency response system. So, like, if you break your leg in Bo, you can, or not Bo, let's say one of the outer provinces, you can get to a hospital quickly
Yeah.
and get it taken care of.
Right.
Another person was working with doctors and ensuring that people were disposing of bodies properly because of Ebola, et cetera, just making a difference. And I was putting ads on Hulu,
Yeah.
right? And I realized that although it might sound cool to some people, it wasn't making a difference. And because I had been going to Sierra Leone and realizing that I could be doing more,
Yeah.
I thought to myself, okay, I'm having some kind of like career existential crisis.
Okay.
So that was May of 2019. By October, I had reached out to some folks on LinkedIn and who had programmatic tech companies in Africa, one in Ghana and one in Nigeria. So I reached out to them to work with them as a consultant.
Okay.
So we all went to Ghana for the year of return, a couple friends of mine and I. And when we got there, I met with one of those companies. And he was like, I appreciate, you coming from Hulu and wanting to work with us, but you haven't really been able to do anything for us. And I realized that because my job was so demanding, I hadn't really been able to do anything in terms of consulting for those folks, bringing them
Gotcha.
new clients,
Yeah.
really offering any real value, except the fact that they could say sometimes we have a consultant that works at Hulu.
Gotcha.
So I realized that, I need to be a little bit more involved in the companies that I'm dealing with. And so December rolls around. I go to Sierra Leone again. I used to have this thing where I'd be rejuvenated every time I'd go to Sierra Leone, and then I'd come back and I'd be like, I'm back to this again. And so in January, I was dealing with some things at work, and the manager that I had was I was basically, he would make me a glorified assistant. You know,
Okay.
like I was doing his PowerPoints for him.
Gotcha.
You know, they did a presentation, a presentation in front of the entire sales organization,
Yep.
and I had to teach him and the other person who were going to be up on stage doing it instead of me being on stage doing
Gotcha.
it.
Yeah.
I had to teach him the thing he didn't know. Like I was the one who got the vendor.
Right.
I was the one who worked. I was the one who pitched the VP of engineering and the CTO, VP of engineering, chief product officer, and the SVP of sales. I had to pitch all of them separately
Gotcha.
to go through this process to do this. And then I had to teach the teams all how to do it, make it all connect and work.
Yeah.
And that's how we got from the 30 to 300 million, right? That I was talking about before.
Yeah.
So imagine I did all of that, really proud
Yeah.
of all of that. And I'm
Yeah.
still doing PowerPoints for my boss.
In the background, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So to me, I felt like, you guys are undervaluing me. And this other company really wants me to work with them.
Yeah.
And they could use me. You guys obviously don't think I'm valuable.
Yeah.
So, and after I had already been feeling like I'm not doing anything but selling Peloton bikes to, middle-aged white women in, rural Ohio.
Right.
So, which that's fine. That's for someone, not for me.
Right.
And so I realized, okay, in January, if I can walk away with a severance package,
Yeah.
then I will do that. And so I met with HR, we had a conversation, we talked about it, and I did. And so
Nice.
I left that job in January of that year with a severance package that looks like, for some people, a full year's income.
Gotcha.
A full year income.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then the pandemic hit. And so while there, I started thinking about what next I was going to do. But throughout that time, I was still advising these companies with this, safety net of cash that I had. And so by the end of that year, I was on my way to Sierra Leone for 2 months and then Ghana full time.
Dope, man. So I'm gonna step back a bit because you put in a lot of nuggets there.
Yeah.
Biggest thing, well, not the biggest thing, but one thing that comes off mind really is the severance package. A lot of people don't think about that when
Sure.
it comes to leaving companies and
Yeah.
talking about a severance package.
Yeah.
For those who don't understand, severance package is basically when you leave a company. Typically, it's like you high and dry, like, all right, go find whatever you're doing.
Yes.
But here they're giving you basically an amount
Yep.
to basically say, hey, we thank you for your services. This is what you think you're valued, X, Y, Z.
Right.
How was that conversation like?
It's a great question. So my manager was younger than me, pretty inexperienced, experienced in what she did, but had no idea what I was doing.
Okay.
And although we were friendly, we were clashing because she didn't understand what I did, so she could not express that to her manager.
Gotcha.
And so it kept coming back like, Joe, I don't know what you're doing. And then she started giving me these documents to fill out. And again, I have a hard time reading. So there's like 80 lines. And I'm like, you want me to fill this thing out? There's no way.
Right.
Like this is all kinds of busy work. I'm bringing in, look how much money I help
Right,
generate.
right.
And you want me to do this thing?
Focus
Like
on my
this,
strength versus, yeah.
I'm focusing on income producing activities.
Right.
I'm not doing this.
Right.
So we kept running into this challenge. And so she told me that they were potentially going to have to put me on a performance improvement plan. I'm like, you're gonna put me on a PIP,
PIP,
even
yeah.
though I'm out here doing. Look how much
Right.
revenue. And then if you
Oh,
looked at
man.
the funny thing
Yeah.
is like I did a 360 review.
Yeah,
After
yeah.
she said that, I asked to do a 360 review at the next
Right.
review. VP of sales in LA was like, we wouldn't have closed Disney, this and this and this,
Right.
these budgets if not for him.
Right.
The other person in San Francisco, same thing. The VP of sales in New York,
Right.
even though I was only supposed to be on the West Coast,
Yeah.
VP of sales in New York, people in the Midwest. I was not even supposed to deal with the Midwest. The people in the Midwest, I had them all
Right.
do the 360 review.
Yeah.
So I had that all documented.
Okay.
Right? That's one. Two, the reason why I know it's $300 million is because I went to the analytics team and had them pull numbers
Gotcha.
on all the campaigns that came out that we had done and how much of it was data related.
Gotcha.
And because I was the one who made the data integrations and I was the one teaching the people even on the East Coast,
Right.
because my manager at the time, unfortunately, did not understand it.
Yeah.
And he was the one who had me do his PowerPoints.
Okay.
So obviously I was helping his sales team sell it too.
Okay.
So,
So two managers that didn't really know what they're doing.
yeah, my original and then another one. So I was still doing, by the way, PowerPoints for
Right.
the old manager once I
Yeah.
got the new manager.
I mean, I got a bunch of questions on that, but I'm
Yeah.
gonna.
So yeah. So
going, sorry.
that's the crazy thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then you're telling me you want to put me on a PIP.
Right.
I said,
And you don't know what you're doing. You put me on a pit.
Yeah, I did crazy. So I said, okay. So I was like, well, I'll just talk to HR.
Yeah.
So I went to HR and I said, look, I've been told I'm going to be put on a performance improvement plan.
Mm-hmm.
This is ridiculous. It's clear. I just came with all the receipts, as the kids say.
Right.
Right. So I had all of what I said, my performance reviews. It's
Right.
undisputable. right? And these are people who are responsible for, hundreds of millions of
Right, right,
dollars in aggregate, over $1 billion in revenue, and
right,
they're saying that I've been a valuable part of the
right,
organization. Then I brought the numbers that, in terms of the relationships I was responsible
right,
for, and the work I did to stand up these different programs and products.
right,
So HR was like, I don't really understand this, but obviously it's clearly like you're doing something right. So that
right.
this doesn't make any sense. So we negotiated. They said they were going to give me 1 month severance. I said, yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
We're not going to do 1 month. I said, we can do 6 months, or we might have a larger issue,
Right.
And so we went back and forth, and they landed on 5 months
Okay.
severance. And so I took it and ran. I also signed a document that said, they did no
You're not gonna come
wrongdoing,
back in.
blah, 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 blah,
Yeah,
blah.
yeah, yeah.
So, but, I was like, hey, listen, I'll take 5 months and I'm gone.
Yeah,
So I was
yeah.
planning to leave anyway.
Got
So,
you.
I was like, I'll take it. I mean, I should have asked for more, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, but
Yeah.
they,
I mean,
they,
that's
they complied.
right.
So I walked away with it. I didn't use I didn't have any legal team, no ChatGPT at the time. So this was all just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And so I went with it, and it seemed to work out. So that was how I did it. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Dope, man. And then in terms of like I guess management wise, like how did you deal with like a manager doesn't know what the I'm not gonna curse here, what the heck they're doing.
Sure. Sure.
And two managers that
Sure.
don't know what the heck they're doing.
Yeah.
And yet you're still having to produce and you're
Yeah.
still producing. And then also and I don't know if this was communicated to them or not, and you can kind of expound on that. You said from a reading standpoint, you hated reading, and that's something that you didn't necessarily excel at. Did you communicate that to them, and they still try to put you in position to not be successful?
Yeah, so the second boss, I was a little bit more clear with her because she was more sympathetic, young woman.
Yep.
So I was able to tell her where I was at, but she
Yep.
was like, well, basically, it was like, well, it doesn't matter. This is
Right.
what the job
You're still
requires.
producing. Yeah,
This is what
yeah,
the
yeah.
job
Yep, yep.
requires. You need to still do what I'm asking you to do.
Right.
The former boss was like a Boston guy. He was like, like he used to box and stuff, so he was not trying to hear that. To him, that sounds soft, right?
Gotcha.
So I already knew that wasn't going to be a conversation I was going to have with him.
Yeah.
So, so to me, the best thing to do, and this is the other thing I will say.
Yeah.
What I learned about an organization of that size is that you can't just go based on your hard work. There is a social aspect to it, because the first boss, was way more social than he was understanding of the role he had.
Gotcha.
Right. And to this day, he's senior leadership in the Disney organization. Right. And in terms of the team. So, he's figured out how to socially get around. People used to always say, man, that guy, I'm not going to say his name, that guy is so funny, so fun to be around, but I have no idea what he does. People used to always say that. And they'd be like, Joe, I don't know how you do it, man. I don't know how you do it. And they're like, I don't know how we would do this without you, and all the things. And he used to say to me, he's like, I keep getting bad reviews, so you can't do this. Like, I would want to go to Sierra Leone for like 2 weeks. And, and we had an unlimited vacation, by the way. I'd want to go to Sierra Leone for 2 weeks. He's like, I can't do that because optics say this. I'm like, listen, my reviews are all good.
Right.
Your reviews are bad, but mine are good. So
You
I don't know what to tell you.
know.
That's your problem. That's
Right.
not my problem.
Right.
And his favorite thing used to be like, that sounds like a you problem. He used to say that to people all the time. And I wanted to say it to him, but he was my boss. So I didn't say it to him. But that was a you problem. So anyway, how I dealt with it, to be honest with you, was like, it was like golden handcuffs. They were paying me too good for me to leave.
Right.
Until I was fed up.
Okay. Did
know,
you get
so-
RSUs and all that with?
So there was like they had yearly bonuses.
Okay. Okay.
So they had these yearly bonuses that mine was tied to the sales team's total
Okay.
revenue, and then the company had one as well.
Gotcha.
And they had every 3 years they had a big one, and then they had a small one each year in between.
Gotcha.
And so I was there for 4 years.
Okay.
So at the beginning of 2019, I got the big one, the third year one, and then at the end of that year, I just was leaving. So it was, the 5 month severance was kind of inclusive and all
Gotcha.
that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, RSUs, if anyone doesn't know, is restricted stock units.
Yeah.
If you work at like a big companies or any company,
Yeah.
they'll give you some shares and stocks, and
Yeah.
you can actually sell that for money and get that back. So yeah.
And they weren't publicly traded
Okay,
or
okay.
planning to be, because they were owned by Disney, 21st Century Fox, and NBC, Comcast, and and there was one more owner. I can't remember. I think
Okay.
Time Warner or something like that.
Gotcha.
So they had, forgive me for the fourth one, but they had all those owners. And
Okay.
so they were kind of a weird company structure. But when Disney bought Fox, they kind of absorbed all of the Fox assets, and then they also just kind of bought shares from everyone else and just took it all.
Gotcha.
So Disney now, I think, solely owns Hulu, if I'm not mistaken.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So you got this big water cash now,
I did, yes.
and you like, all right, I'm booking for for Africa.
Well, not immediately.
Okay. So
Not
what
immediately.
happened during that
So
interim?
I said, you know what? Let me move back to New York
Okay.
and seeing if I can transition into the space of investing on the continent of Africa while I am not managing, while I am advising
Okay.
these companies in Africa.
Okay.
And by June, July, I had spoken to a peer mentor of mine, and he was just like, look, if you really, first of all, if you want to get into that space, you need to work with incubators, because no VC firm is going to hire you with no finance background, don't have a master's degree. You don't have the prerequisites required to go work at a VC firm.
Gotcha.
But you can start the process of getting some experience to help you potentially be able to transition into that space. But you want to start with these incubators.
Gotcha.
And so for those who aren't aware, incubators, think about an incubator for a baby. They do this for companies, right? So you spend 3 or 4 or 5 months, depending on the incubator, and they basically set you up with sometimes a chief technology officer. They bring in people to teach you about finance, about accounting, about all those kinds of things. And so I ended up working with 3 that year. So I went to MEST, Founders Institute, and then eventually Google for Startups.
Gotcha.
So I did that. And this actually comes to another story with this peer mentor of mine, because a lot of people ask him for a lot of things. He went to my boarding school, and we grew up together. He's Sierra Leonean, as a matter of fact.
Dope.
Shout out to Cordell Robin Coker, who is the founder of Carry First, raised over $40 million for a startup.
Nice,
He's
man.
really doing his thing.
Dope.
But obviously, people read about that stuff. It's all over LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever.
Yeah.
So everybody's always hitting him up. One of the things that I did is I followed and followed up. I followed through and followed up. Fortune is in the follow-up, guys. That's for sure. So he said to me, these 3 companies, these are the top 3 ones that you should be looking at. So you know what I did? I found a way to get in with all 3 of them, and I became an advisor for their startups for all 3 of them. Then I got back to him and told him I did it.
Yeah.
And he was like, wow, that's impressive. All 3, you know? And so that ended up helping me get a job later.
Nice.
He actually introduced me to the CEO of Jumia, Ghana, when I was moving to Ghana.
Yeah.
But to take a step back, he was like, you need to be on the ground if you really want to make something happen.
Dope.
And so I started thinking through, is it time for me to move to the continent? Where do I want to move? All of those kinds of things. And so by June of 2020, I was pretty sure I was going to move, especially now that the pandemic had hit. It'd been a few months.
Gotcha.
Things were a bit hectic in New York. I was in Vermont at the time, spent a lot of time consuming cannabis and also like in my own mind thinking about different things. And I decided, yes, I'm going to move to the continent.
Okay.
And so because I had the money, I could sit on that for a little bit and use that to pay my bills and things like that. And I still had enough that when I got to Ghana at the end of the year, I still had like $20,000 of the amount that I had been, given as severance.
Okay.
Or awarded as severance, I should say. It wasn't given because I worked for that. Earned.
Yeah.
And so I moved to the continent in November of that year. I moved to Sierra Leone for 2 months.
Okay.
I actually landed the day of the election day.
Okay.
2020.
Okay.
And then 2 months later, in early January, I moved to Ghana.
Okay. I know you had your boy that was there, but did you have any other connections that you made prior? And then, was that like a factor?
No, just that company.
Wow.
That I was advising.
Wow. Okay.
But because I had a bunch of people in Sierra Leone, and Ghana was a little bit more advanced, smoother transition, I figured like if all my friends could transition to Sierra Leone, I can go to Ghana, right? Yeah. And so in my mind, I was just like, and especially because while I was in Sierra Leone, I had a conversation with Cordell, the peer mentor of mine, and he was like, I can introduce you to the CEO of Jumia. Jumia is an e-commerce company. It's the Amazon of Africa, publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange.
Nice.
And so he said, I can introduce you to the CEO of Jumia Ghana. And so I said, okay, then yeah, please. And so because I knew that there was a potential that I could get that role, and I had the $20,000 in cash, I said, why not? I mean, I can go to Ghana. I'm not even that worried about it.
Yeah.
And I'd gone out on a limb other times. I moved to LA on a limb without any real network there, not really knowing anybody there.
Yeah.
So I figured, it's a completely different move.
Yeah.
And I don't recommend it for anybody the way I did it. Let me just tell you guys that now. And that's what I always talk about on my platform now is that if I wouldn't change anything for the world, but with different knowledge, I would have done things differently.
Okay. Like what?
I would have made sure I had more money
Okay.
and I had a consistent stream of income
Okay.
before moving.
Okay.
Because if, let's say I didn't get that job
Yeah.
at Jumia, or let's say I hated it more than I did
Yeah.
and I wanted to leave that job sooner,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had a choice.
Yeah.
And so many people move to the continent and move right back.
Yeah.
And so that's one thing I would have done, is made sure I would have had a consistent stream of income. I would have also made sure that I had visited more than once. I had a 4-day visit the year before, and all of a sudden I'm deciding to move there. Not recommended. Not recommended.
I've heard about this many times. You talked about it. in your
Many times I
podcast.
talked about it on my live stream. So
Yeah,
those
yeah,
are the two
yeah.
main things that I would say, is that
Yeah.
that I would have done those things differently.
Yeah.
But again, had I not done that, I wouldn't have had the story to tell other people.
Right.
And I can tell you with confidence,
Mm-hmm.
the reason why I can tell you that is because I've done it. And so that to me, I think was that was the best lesson, I think, for me,
Yeah.
just going through it like that.
That's dope. That's dope. All right. So you talked. So yeah, 20K or so in an account.
Yeah.
When it came to like doing work there, what was like your experience like working there?
Great question.
Yeah.
How do I explain it? Shout out to my Ghanaians, you know what I'm saying? I love Ghana. I love my Ghanaian people. Here's what I would say.
This is not edited.
Yeah, just to be clear, many of them were way underpaid.
Yep.
And senior leadership was in Europe, so let's just put it that way, who hadn't been on the ground sometimes in years. So they didn't know the situation on the ground. But it was the hardest job I have ever had. And I just told you what my experience was. That was first world problems, what I was dealing with at Hulu.
Right.
When I got to Jumia, it was, imagine a company that has brand recognition on the continent, but in that country, it has a negative brand outlook. People were buying stuff that were fake. So you thought it was real. It was fake when you got it. The return system was difficult. They had so many logistical issues.
Wow.
And it's because they had so much turnover. Senior leadership kept leaving. And it's because they were being given commands and directions from people who hadn't been on the ground.
Gotcha.
And most of the most talented people would come in, see these issues, think that they were insurmountable, and leave. So, and the thing is, when you have so much turnover, you have no ability to do knowledge sharing.
Right.
So every new person had to learn it all over again, then leave.
Yep.
Then the next person had to learn it all over again, then leave. And there was never any overlap where you were hiring people and there was like an understanding or a knowledge transfer.
Right. Right.
So that had happened the previous couple of years before I got there. So I use that as a preference to, I say that to say this. When I got there, I was surprised to find so many smart people who were not willing to do the basics of their job, and it's because of all the things that I mentioned before.
Yeah.
And so what I ended up having to do after spending 6 months floundering, I mean, I don't speak Tree, right? I'm not Ghanaian.
Yeah.
And Ghanaian culture is different from Sierra Leonean culture. In Sierra Leone, sometimes we can be a little bit more aggressive in our communication with folks, right? Because that's the way we are.
Right.
Ghanaians are very different, are more docile. They communicate very differently. And so I had to learn culturally, one. Two, when you're dealing with people who are underpaid and overworked,
Yeah.
you're gonna find discontent in all different kinds of ways. And here comes this American
Right.
who's trying to tell them what to do.
Right.
This American Sierra Leonean, that small country over there, so there's that too, right?
Yeah.
And I wear it with pride now. I'm Sierra Leonean. I let people know that, So it was a little bit of that. There's sometimes a little bit of jealousy too,
Yeah.
and I only
Yeah.
say that because a woman who was there could speak Tree, and she would tell me what people would say.
Yep.
Because it would seem like, oh, they just brought this American guy in here
Right.
who thinks he knows better.
Right.
And so I had to learn a lot of things by trial, by fire,
Yeah.
and it was very, very difficult. And then I had to learn how to motivate them. And that was very, very difficult. So one of the things that I started doing was tying the work that they were doing every day to their revenue, their income.
Gotcha.
So, I'm realizing you guys weren't even giving your revenue goals for the year as a salesperson. So you don't even know what you're working towards.
Right.
So first I have to go work with the finance team and work with senior leadership to get your goals for you. And
Yeah.
I'm telling them their goals. Here are your goals, even though that's a whole nother org. It's not even my organization.
Right.
But I'm going and telling them the goals. Then I say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? I'm very big on metaphors,
Right.
as you might have noticed. So, or sayings. Millions have been made from cliches. Okay, just, So I sit down with them and I say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So yes, the goal is $30,000. How many clients do you have that are listing their products on Jumia? Okay, you have this many. All right. Of these, we need to find out a revenue goal that we want to have for each one.
So I'm gonna stop you right
Yeah.
there. How much was Jumia valued at the time?
Well, it's publicly traded. So in terms of what they do in real revenue versus what they were valued, I can't like a couple hundred million because they were one of the first tech unicorns. They were the first tech unicorn in Africa.
So the reason I bring that up is
Yeah.
because I think there's a lot of misnomers or ideas about these large or semi-large framed companies
Yeah.
that have their, ish straight. That's not the case.
Oh yeah.
I can tell you right, that is not the case. There's
Oh, yeah.
a lot of large companies that have a lot of backwards technology or backwards processes that aren't really in line. So I wanted to kind of bring that up because
Yeah.
I think when people think about like Netflix, Facebook, and all these other like big corps, like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
everything is in line. No, that is not the case at
Good
all.
point.
So,
And that is not exclusive to Africa. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
Yep,
not exclusive
yep,
to Africa for
yep,
sure.
yep.
So yeah, I mean, it was $100 million company. They're one of the I think they are the first tech unicorn in
Yeah.
Africa, right? So big deal. Publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange, as I mentioned.
And then you talking about just the basics in terms of like projections. Like if you don't even have projections in line. So
So imagine we're 2 months into the new year. Nobody knows their goal for the year.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So, and I'm the one giving it to them, even though I'm
Right.
not their manager.
Yep.
Right. So now I'm sitting with these folks, 16 one-on-ones I was doing with each one of these individuals. And I would sit with them and I put together the document myself, listed all of their clients, right? So, and just to give some context, so these were folks that were dealing with the folks who list their products on Jumia, right? So, Coca-Cola, et cetera, they list products on Jumia.
Yep.
And so they had to come up with a goal of revenue that they wanted to do throughout the year.
Yep.
And so I break it down by client, by month,
Yep.
right? So like, all the math I had to do, guys, crazy.
And you got paid a lot of extra money for this, right?
Absolutely not.
Oh, really?
Absolutely not.
Let's continue.
Nothing extra for that. In fact, I was underpaid for all this work. So, but I'm passionate about it. So I said, let me just do this. And these are my fellow Africans and I want to see us succeed. So, and there were some smart people. I mean, Ghanaians are really smart, really well-educated people. Sometimes you just need to inspire some folks to really get the best out of them, right?
Yep.
So so I sat down with them, 16 different one-on-ones. It's crazy to think about that now.
Yeah.
And so with each one, I would sit down and we would go through each one. And so and I found that to be very, very taxing and very tiring, but necessary to get the bare minimum out of them.
Right.
I mean, we'd have a meeting with a large multinational client, Diageo, and the person who owns the account never would come prepared to talk about the numbers of sales, the weekly sales numbers every week.
That's crazy.
He said, I don't know how to use the third-party platform that we use. So I'd have to sit down with him 30 minutes before with someone else who knows how to use it.
That's crazy.
And they would sit down and they would go through it. And so he'd have the graphs ready to share with Diageo.
Yep.
And I'm like, bro, if you don't know this, how do you expect to make your commission?
Right.
Like, I know you feel like you're not getting paid, but you can make commission if you make sure that Diageo spends more money. And yes, of course, if they spend more money, I make more money too.
Right.
So yes, let's all work together so we can all
Let's
make more money.
Yeah, yeah.
And so yeah, but it was very challenging. And so that's what I found it to be. It was the most difficult thing that I've ever done, really, in my career, really. The most work that I've ever had to do. I'm in the office every day, working 7 days a week. I still have Authentic African on the side too.
Yeah.
And so, I was getting paid about $30,000 a year.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so which they said was on the high end for them.
Yeah.
They said they were paying more than what they wanted to for that particular position.
Wow.
And so,
And living expenses, how's that like in relation to like that salary and all that?
I was paying about $600 a month in rent.
Okay.
But I was going to Sierra Leone
Okay.
a couple times a year.
Gotcha.
And so that income had to last me in Sierra Leone, staying at hotels. This is before I had, any dwelling or housing built.
Yeah.
So, it was gone.
Okay.
Like every bit of money I made was spent
Okay.
on the
And that
content.
was consistent, like in terms of pay as well. So like every was it 2 weeks? Every 2 weeks? Or was it like a
Once a
month?
month.
Once a month. And they were consistent.
They were consistent, but I will say this: it was paid in Ghana cedis, which was losing value at a
Yep.
rapid pace
Yep.
over
Yep.
the time that I was there. I was only
Yep.
there for a year, exactly a year.
Man.
I was hanging on by a pinky nail, man. I was as soon as I got another job, I was out of there.
Yeah.
But I did make a lot of friends and did really well networking.
Gotcha.
I have a network around the
Very
continent because
important.
they were around 11 different countries. That's
Yep.
another reason why I took the role too. There were across 11 countries around the continent of Africa, really talented, smart people.
Nice. Nice.
And other countries did really well. Like Jumia in Nigeria is crushing it. One of the best businesses to work for, and one of the biggest businesses in Nigeria.
Dope.
But in Ghana, it wasn't operating as it's the size of Ghana the way it should.
Yeah.
Ghana was bottom 3
Gotcha.
of the 11 countries, even though it was like in terms of size and scale, it should have been top 5.
Okay. What's number one? Do you know remember?
Number 1 was fluctuating between Egypt and Kenya. Oh no, sorry, Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya.
Okay.
But Nigeria and
Okay.
Egypt were like the ones doing the best, and that was in terms of total revenue or advertising revenue, which was my remit.
Okay.
So advertising revenue, Nigeria was crushing it.
Nice.
For example, we were excited if we could make $75,000 in revenue from advertisers in a month, which was my best month there, coming from $3,000. $3,000 was my first month, and then that went away by the next month I was there because I didn't know anything because it was pre me getting there. Mm-hmm. They would get $75,000 from one client for a month.
Okay. Wow.
Right, and that was our total revenue from like 12 clients.
Yeah.
In Ghana.
Yeah.
So just to, and obviously the sizes of the countries are different, 200 million versus 30 million, but still Ghana is the other beacon of light in West Africa, and you would expect that it was doing well. Yeah. Senegal was performing better than Ghana.
Was it implemented around the same time in terms of like the department HQ? Like was Jumia started in Nigeria and Ghana around the same time? Was it?
Each country subsequently added on.
Gotcha.
So I know Nigeria was first.
Okay.
Ghana did come later, and then they had other countries that they started and stopped.
Gotcha.
The other issue that Ghana had was, or that Jumia had for the employee, not for the company. It was smart for the company. They're an umbrella company, and each of them are individual entities.
Good. Okay.
So by country.
Gotcha.
So each country has its own company.
Okay.
So it was Jade E-Services Incorporated in Ghana, not Jumia. It was a whole different subsidiary of Jumia Incorporated,
Gotcha.
the larger organization.
Okay.
And that meant that they can cut one off and it doesn't really impact them so much in terms of the overall revenue and all kinds of other things. They could report them differently.
Gotcha.
That's what I understand anyway. But yeah, Nigeria was crushing it. Kenya was crushing it. Senegal was like really beating us bad. It was crazy.
And Egypt too, right?
Egypt was doing really well.
Okay.
I mean, we were bottom 3, so everyone was doing better than us. So yeah, I mean, so to answer your question, it's a long way to answer your question, but there were many challenges. And what I want to be clear on is I'm not making disparaging remarks about Ghanaians.
Right.
I just want to be clear that experience was a learning experience, and it was really more about the management that wasn't even Ghanaians. It was more European management that really wasn't setting us up for success.
Yep. And I think it's important to clarify that because a lot of businesses that actually are running, across the continent, a lot of folks who are doing that, you have to know what's happening on ground. You have to know, you have to get a good temperature, what your staff are going through, what's actually in the mix for the people, your clients that you're actually offering services or products to. And I think a lot of times there's like that disconnect. So then you asking people to manage stuff that has no bearings in terms of like what is really happening on ground.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that you clarified that piece too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So where did Sierra Leone come in the picture?
It's a great question. Yeah. So I didn't even get to that part yet. So 2 years in Ghana. I spent a year working at Jumia. Then I ended up getting another company. Back to a person who I'd worked with at a previous company. She had now gone on to be a C-level executive at another company, and she said we need someone with your skill set, basically.
Okay. All right. Nick is bringing on the fire, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
If I'm slurring in my words, thank Nick, guys.
For sure.
Yeah.
So she got me this job. And so I was there for a year, and they decided they didn't, and I was trying to convince them to expand to Africa. It's a product that was necessary. They decided they didn't want to do it. So I ended up leaving that company. And so my only source of income was Authentic African
Okay.
and some consulting I was doing here and there.
Yeah.
And so it made sense for me now that my house was 85% done, the guest house on my property was 85% done,
Yeah.
moved to Sierra Leone, friends that are already there,
Yeah.
I can now make that move. Because I don't think my goal was ever to live 100% forever in Ghana.
Yeah.
I was thinking, maybe somewhere else, but I wanted to see what Sierra Leone was going to be about.
Right.
And since I had friends there who had been living there for quite a long time, and people that I had been, going and visiting twice or three times a year once I moved to Ghana. So it was that simple. It was like a discussion with a friend of mine. He had a 2-bedroom apartment. He was like, you can stay here with me.
Yeah.
We're both on the board of a nonprofit in Sierra Leone.
Okay.
So it just made sense, right? Like,
Right.
I'll move in with you for a couple of months and then move into my own place, and I can live rent free.
Gotcha.
So even though I've lost a couple of sources of income, I'm also reducing my expenditures, so I can live in Sierra Leone rent free.
Yeah.
So that was the reason. It was just like, I can sell all my stuff in Ghana, move to Sierra Leone, start over, but also start over with an entire network that I know. And then I continued to cultivate the years living in Ghana.
Okay.
Because when I was in when I was in the U.S., I would go to Sierra Leone twice a year, but it'd be like for a week.
Gotcha.
When I was living in Ghana, I could go to Sierra Leone for 3 weeks,
Gotcha.
4 weeks, a month or longer.
Yeah.
So I had started to really cultivate relationships and build
Nice.
build on these friendships. So I felt like it was time for me to move to Sierra Leone.
Dope. Dope. Did you ever consider purchasing land? Like initially, once you moved to Ghana, or working there, did you consider like buying
I
property
did,
there?
but the way my bank account was set up, there was no way I was going to be able to purchase that land.
Yeah.
Anywhere to me that was worthwhile. I know
Yeah.
that there's the land in Cebu, which is near Cape Coast, and there's other land like far outside of Accra. And I do think long term that makes sense, because they're building communities around them. But for me, I was trying to buy something that I could actually live on,
Gotcha.
so that I could go to the capital city often.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't have the finances to do that.
Gotcha.
And also, there's some hoops you have to jump through when you're not a Ghanaian citizen.
Yep.
So I'm also not a Ghanaian citizen.
Yep.
And so for me, it was like Sierra Leone made the most sense to continue to buy. So, I had already bought land in 2019, which I don't know if I even mentioned on on this particular interview. But yeah, I bought land in 2019 in Sierra Leone. And then I had bought land in 2023, January 2023.
Okay.
In Sierra Leone right before I moved to Sierra Leone.
Okay. So when you moved to Sierra Leone, that land that you bought in 2019, was that what you planned on developing initially?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So I had a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom guest house on the property, which I
Yep.
definitely recommend anybody do.
Okay.
Because then you can be on ground watching the work being done while it's being done.
Yep.
Also, you don't have to pay for hotels every time you go.
Yep.
Because, Sierra Leone, the hotels are pretty expensive.
Expensive.
Yeah. So, and,
Expensive.
I've given way too much money to Pearl Hotel, the Atlantic Lumley, Radisson Blue. You guys seen all my money.
Yep.
Way too much money throughout the years. So when I moved to Sierra Leone, I actually was 6 months, almost 6 months. So it was longer than I anticipated.
Okay.
Staying at my friend's house, which I vlogged. I don't know if you saw any of those vlogs, but I vlogged that experience, which was interesting, like setting up water and all kinds of other stuff. They didn't have running water there. And then thinking about setting up solar, and then just deciding not to do that, and then moving to my property. Mm-hmm. So I moved in October of 2023.
Okay.
I moved into the property that I had purchased in 2019. I moved into the 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom guest house on site. And that was an experience, to say the least. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I don't even think you talked about that
Yeah.
in terms of like experience from moving from New York to Ghana, like living there.
Sure.
And like just the differences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Infrastructure wise, like
Yeah.
data is readily available in NYC, but in Ghana, what was that like? And then we're gonna get into Sierra Leone.
Okay,
Let's just
that's a
talk
whole nother
about-
story, right?
Yeah.
So Ghana. So this is the way it works in Ghana. Almost everything you pay as you go.
Okay.
So your electricity, you pay as you go. Your data, you pay as you go. Minutes you use to talk on the phone, voice minutes, you pay as you go. Sierra Leone's the same way. So what was interesting in Ghana was I thought that I would always buy a plan that was strong enough,
Sufficient, yeah.
sufficient enough. But I was always buying more. And same thing with electricity, everything. So
Yeah.
that was an adjustment, is not being able to budget properly
Yeah.
for how much data I'm going to need. Some months it's $60, some months it's $80. And what I noticed is that they didn't really have unlimited plans for
Gotcha.
the internet service providers that I was utilizing.
Okay.
So that was one thing. In terms of working with service workers, so I moved into an apartment that didn't have hot water. So the apartment that they showed me, the model apartment had a hot water heater that they put in there.
Bait and switch, huh?
Yeah.
Bruh.
So now they swore that they told me the apartment building didn't have
Of course.
the apartment building didn't have hot
Let me
water.
record
I
this.
don't remember that. I don't remember that discussion. So I had to pay
Yeah.
somebody to do hot water,
Right.
and that was the first time I started working with like hardcore service workers.
Okay.
And what I found is, like I mentioned, Ghanaians are smart, well educated, speak very good English. So sometimes you might feel like that means that that person is very qualified to do the work that they're doing. And what I found is that a lot of times people say yes to work that they don't have the ability to do, meaning they may not have the skill set or the time to do it.
Yeah.
And they may have their apprentice do it, or they'll just not show up. And so that was a big challenge for me. Is like I used to be pissed off when I would talk to like Cablevision, and they're like, "We'll be there between the hours of 11 and 2." I'm like, "Why is it the window 4 hours? That's crazy." Or whatever the time is. That's what 3 hours. And then I moved to Ghana, and there is no window. I'll be there first thing tomorrow.
Yeah.
Then it's 12 o'clock. They're still not there. You're calling. They can't get them. Then they come the next day as if they were like it was the day that they were supposed to come.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you were supposed to be here yesterday, and
Yeah.
you came the next day. So these were all things that I had to adjust,
Yeah.
adjust to. And there are other, minor things, dating. There are other things that you kind of have to adjust to when you move to a different country and a different part of the world. But I would say that the biggest challenge to me, I think, was this around some of the infrastructural challenges. But there were other things that were easy to transition to. So one, I don't cook my own food. So having a housekeeper cook for me was
Nice.
great. And then on weekends or anytime I wanted to have something different, I could do Uber Eats or Bolt Food, or Jumia has a food delivery service.
Nice.
So I would order from Jumia food. I could have my dry cleaning done
Okay.
through an app. I can order an Uber or a
Dope.
Bolt to get to different places too
Yeah.
for transportation. So it was smooth in terms of those kinds of things. Just learning that, for Uber, you got to pay cash.
Yeah.
People don't want you to pay by card because they get paid at the end of the month, and they'll get pissed off and they'll cancel on you unless you are ordering the ride by cash.
Yeah.
So like little things, little like nuanced things that you kind of have to learn as you go along. But I think it wasn't that hard of a transition. It's a pretty smooth landing, especially
Nice.
since I had been going to Sierra Leone often, and I had been in places where there was less electricity. I had had water issues before. So I had learned and heard about other things, like hanging out with friends and their experiences. So going to Ghana, the challenges that I saw were not the same as what I was going to see once I got to Sierra Leone.
Gotcha. And then in terms of pay, when you got paid, was it direct to account?
Yes. So I set up a bank account, and
Okay.
so it was direct deposit.
Okay. So if you didn't have that, would they just give you a live
They'll
check?
give you a check, a live check.
Okay.
And then to go cash a check at a bank is a process.
Okay.
I got a video on my channel. You can check that out. That was a process. So yeah, I mean, look, they'll still pay you by check.
Okay.
The thing that sucks is that like you see the number, it's the same, but it buys less. We talk about inflation here,
Right.
but like you see it immediately.
Wow.
Like when I moved to Ghana, it was $1 for every 6 Ghana cedis. As of today, I just looked at it. It's $1 for every 16 Ghana
Wow.
cedis.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
there was a very big difference in the value of the CD.
What does
while I
that
was there.
buy? Like, let's say $1. What would that buy? At least back in the day, what would that buy?
Well, let me do it this way. Like I would buy snacks, like these little like peanut butter covered snacks. I would buy them for 1 Ghana cedi,
Okay.
which is I guess 1/16 of a dollar, whatever that looks like. I don't do math in public, but you guys can do the math. So pause it and use your calculator. So, but yeah, I mean, so the way I would describe it to most people is whatever you could buy for $1 here, you can buy for a CD there.
Okay.
Generally.
Gotcha.
So most things, the prices kind of are dropped to match the environment that you're in.
Okay.
So the only thing that I think is that doesn't work that way is when you're buying gas for a vehicle.
Okay.
It's actually more expensive a lot of times
Yeah,
there than
yep.
it is here.
Yeah, because I know definitely Sierra Leone is like
Yeah,
way
because
more expensive.
they're
Right.
importing it from elsewhere. So
Yep.
right, so you're paying all those import fees
Yeah.
and the transferring of the oil or whatever, the gas. Yeah, so I would say, it was not that bad of a transition, to be honest, moving to Ghana. I mean, like little things.
Yeah.
For maybe for other people it'd be more difficult because
Yeah.
people who don't visit as often as I do or hadn't
Right.
been there. But I kind of had an idea of what to expect.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest thing is just getting acclimated with the culture. Little
Yep.
things like I said, your internet, your cable, if you buy cable, your phone, like just understanding how to do those things, how to send mobile money.
Yeah.
Like these are all things that just you're not used to doing,
Yeah.
right? So it's just you got to kind of experience it once or twice. You got it. You can kind of move forward with it. So that's what I would say is a major difference.
Gotcha. Do you know what your bandwidth was by any chance for like
Yeah, the
internet?
Mbps,
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
up and down.
Yep.
So it was 15.
That's not bad. That's not bad though.
Yeah, if
I
it
mean,
worked.
yeah. Oh.
Right? So sometimes, a truck
Okay.
came one time and knocked down the Vodafone wires. And I didn't even know until like a day later. I'm like, why isn't my Vodafone working? And
Yeah.
they told me later, like, oh yeah, a truck came by and knocked on the wires. So,
Wow.
oh, thanks for telling me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and so yeah, but in Sierra Leone, many times it's like 6
Yeah.
max, right? If you pay like $100 a month, it's about 6.
I had 3.
Yeah,
So-
most of the time it's like three,
Right.
3, 5,
Yeah.
10, maybe whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, in Ghana it can be up to 15 Mbps.
Okay.
So that was a challenge to
Okay.
say the least. When I would live stream, of
Yeah.
course I'd have issues with it cutting in and out. People
Yeah.
would always say, "Oh, I can tell you're in the States now because I can actually see you clearly."
Yeah, yeah.
So people had to be very patient with me. If you guys
Right.
have been followers of the platform,
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I know Ghana's had I don't know if you ever used it, but Starlink, they've had Starlink for a bit more than we did.
Sierra Leone, yeah.
Yeah, but it's significantly more
Expensive, for sure.
to utilize that than
Yeah, well, my budget
so-
wasn't set up for Starlink.
Right, that's
so
what I was gonna say.
so I heard about Starlink. I was like, I can't get that. No, I'm going to work on my Vodafone and MTN.
Yeah.
So what I did is I would just have backups, and this is a piece of advice for people. So I had 2 fiber connections. So, and fiber is not like the fiber optic cables that you have in the United States, like FiOS.
Yeah.
It's cords that are along the telephone lines. It's different. So they're not underground. They're not
Yeah.
like these big fiber optic
I was just
cables.
literally about to ask that.
They're
Okay.
just like an Ethernet cord.
Yeah.
Like almost like a cord that looks like the
Yeah.
cord for these lights, and that's what's going across the telephone lines and directly into your box,
Wow.
right? So I had MTN and Vodafone fiber in home, so if one went down, I used the other,
Gotcha.
and then I had MiFi's. I had a Surfline MiFi and I had a Vodafone MiFi.
Okay.
Because if power goes out,
Yeah.
you have to be able to jump over to the
Right.
MiFi, which runs on battery operated.
Yep.
Right. So that was how I was able to kind of go live without fear of anything happening.
Yeah.
Because sometimes light would go out, take a while for the generator to come on. You can't be offline that long in the middle of a live stream.
Right.
So I would just hop over to the MiFi.
Okay. That's dope, man.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of nuggets, a lot of things I'm learning.
There's a lot I had to learn.
Yeah.
These are all
Yeah.
things you got to learn when you're on ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is stuff that I talk about on the platform too, just to kind of help people understand what to expect and what you need to do. I'm the king of unsolicited advice, so I guess that's why the platform is good for me to have something like this because I like to just tell people what I recommend you do.
Yeah, dope,
Yeah.
dope. All right, so we're now branching into Sierra Leone.
Sure.
Okay, so what was it like? I guess the first few months there in Sierra Leone.
It was hard, man. I'll be honest with you. I no longer have the income from that job that I had after Jumia. I'm operating solely on authentic African income. So that's YouTube income. That's people paying me to post on Instagram.
Yep.
I had a couple of consulting clients that every once in a while they'd pay me for a gig,
How often were you posting on Authentic African?
Consistently, it's always been between 4 and 6 times a day.
So even there was the same.
Always, yeah.
Okay.
And so I always had that expense of a social media manager.
Nice.
So I was always paying a
Nice.
social media manager.
Nice.
For YouTube, we've had our ebbs and flows because I was managing all of that. So that's the challenging part.
Okay.
But yeah, so it was a very difficult transition. I moved into an apartment. You get what you pay for. It's about $200 a month. And we didn't have running water when I first moved in there. So, we'd have to flush the toilet, wash our hands with the jugs, the 5-gallon jugs of water. So eventually I worked to get a plumber to come through, and we ended up getting water. So that was a little bit of a challenge. Light issues. The electricity is a big issue. So, I live stream every single Monday without fail. I try to say I have no excuses. So it's tough to do when there's no light and the internet connectivity wasn't so great. So I was in a building that was next to a really close to another one, lots of like metal, cement, whatever, lots of interference. So we couldn't get a good signal in the house. So I started live streaming from someone else's house.
Yeah.
Then I bartered with someone else to use her office to go live a couple of times. Then because I had interviewed the manager per hotel, eventually, Mars, shout out to Mars. I appreciate you, perpetually. He just allows me to go live there. So like I've been to Sierra Leone a couple times this year dealing with some family related items, and he's allowed me to go live from the hotel.
Yeah.
Because if they have a power outage, they have backup power supply.
Yeah.
Even in my own place in Freetown, I almost said right. In Freetown, I run into issues with light. Even my generator, it's loud, or in the background, the internet's not so great. So I tended not to go live from there. And then, so I had to find a system to kind of do everything that I needed to do.
Okay.
And it was a combination of a couple things. I didn't have the income that I had previously. And so now I start taking on work that I would never normally do. So, how do I speak about this? So I did an event once, which I ended up almost losing a friend over because of how it went, and because they were offended by something I had to do based on the role I was given at this event.
Gotcha.
But I took it on because I needed the money.
Yeah. Yep.
It was like $500, and I was like, man, I need that 500.
Yeah.
Like that's how crazy it was. It's like, man,
yeah.
500 was perfect timing.
Right,
I really needed that.
Right.
So just think about that, right?
Right, exactly.
So the 500 from that, or I would pitch brands on running their social media for them. Okay. I told myself I would never do a social media agency again. I had a social media agency in 2019. I said I would never do it again. It's too much work. But I pitched a bunch of brands on it because I needed some income. And so, and they couldn't even pay $500 a month. Past 3 months, one paid me $100, but I took it on because I needed to have a proof of concept to pitch other brands.
Right.
But I remember going to a bank who I know how much money they spend on different things, and they offered to pay me $100 a month. I'm like, I can't even pay my social media manager in Nigeria $100. Like,
right.
I can't
gonna
do that.
This year?
She costs more than that.
Right.
And the services that I use to do posting across platform, it cost me way too much. I'd be losing money taking you on as a client. I can't do that. And so that was a big challenge, thinking that because I'm Sierra Leonean and because I have this experience in the US and experience in Ghana, that it'd be like an easy transition to go pitch these companies. Yeah. And what I found was, I would go and have these conversations. Oh, let me just say this. I had 70 meetings to get 3 clients.
That's crazy.
And I counted the meetings.
Yeah.
So it was truly 70, maybe like 73.
Yeah.
But 73 meetings to get 3 clients.
Wow.
Who couldn't pay $500 more than 3 months. So it was only 3 months that I had each of these clients for. So,
Were these large clients?
No, small companies.
Okay.
Through an incubator.
Okay.
And they actually had gotten funding from a company that gives funding to small companies, small SMEs in Sierra Leone.
And they could fund for $500 for...
It was a part of a total marketing budget.
Okay.
And so some of them wanted to use that marketing budget for other things. It's Sierra Leone, so personal finances,
right?
So like
yeah.
So it was just like, and I get it and I understand it. So I don't even want to. I'm just not disparaging. It's just you got to do what you got to do. It is what it is.
Yep.
So, and I appreciated each of those clients, it just wasn't enough to sustain a living. And it was, what I was asking for was more than what they were willing to pay. It was me pitching and pushing to even get to the 500 per month with each of them.
Yeah.
And so it was challenging, it was challenging for them to pay me for the services. And it was challenging for me to be able to have an output that was something they'd be satisfied with just $500. Cause it's really a $2,000 per month product that I can provide, but they can only pay 500. So you're going to get a fraction of what I can do.
Right.
I can't do community engagement. I cannot log in and comment on other posts. I can't run any ads for you. It's just I can't boost posts. I just
Right.
don't have the budget. So it did make it challenging in that sense. So it was a learning lesson. I learned a lot through that process. And by the end of a year, I realized that if I want to live in Sierra Leone full time, I do need to find a way to have residual income in country
Yep.
and not be taking money from the US and sending it there. Because if that starts to dry up, as it was for me over the
Yep.
last 4 years, all of my relationships were going away. All the relationships that I had made were great, but it wasn't strong enough to say, hire this dude who has barely working internet and lights go out in the middle of a call with a client to be able to work for us in this country where
Yep.
we have plenty of capable people here in the United States, right?
Yeah.
So that was the biggest challenge for me, was not being able to find new clients to consult for or with, and also not unable to find a source of income in Sierra Leone.
Yeah.
As I told you, I applied for a company there, a role that was, 3 steps behind where I was in my career,
Yep.
didn't get the role. And, it was really frustrating because it's like, come on, this is easy.
Right.
Like I could really, first of all, we could work together with my own platform and what
Right.
you're doing, and we could really try to bring more people to the product.
Right.
I could be a brand ambassador for you. You
Yep.
could set up, like all these things I was thinking that I could do with this company, and I didn't get the role. So, it was disheartening, but also it was the most challenging thing was me deciding that I had to go
Yeah.
and leaving, because I really didn't want to leave. I think a lot of times when people leave the continent of Africa, they feel like it's a failure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I have a friend of mine who always says we should normalize, if you have to leave and, come back later.
Yep.
But it was a learning lesson, right?
Yeah.
A loss is not a loss, it's a lesson,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And so for me, it was definitely a learning lesson. It was important for me to learn that lesson. Do I miss it? Of course. I wish I was in Sierra Leone right now.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
because I'm here, I'm also able to be grateful for having the U.S. passport and the career that I've had, the network that I have, to be able to come back and work go back to the income I had before I left the continent.
Yeah.
And choose who I work for and work with. The organization I work with now are the kind of people who I want to work with.
Dope.
And it's a minority run company, people who have similar values that I have, who are understanding, fully remote.
Nice.
And
Is it global? Well, they allow you to work globally.
yeah, they allow me to work globally, but I do have clients and meetings that have to be had in New York. So
Okay.
I do need to be in New York most of the time.
Okay. Okay.
But I am traveling to Sierra Leone in a couple of weeks.
Nice.
I just came back from Sierra Leone a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so they're accommodating in that sense.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. And the reason I ask that is because you know, I also have a role that allows me to be global.
Yeah.
I think for any who are trying to relocate or looking to work within the continent, having a employer that allows you to, to do that, I think it's very valuable. And those are things to do research beforehand. You can ask those questions even in interviews. I think oftentimes we don't ask those. And for those who work, in the continent now, there are also companies that allow you to work in the U.S. and work
Right.
in, UK, wherever.
Yeah.
So it's very important to ask those questions, beforehand.
Absolutely. You should be interviewing a company
Yep.
as they're interviewing you.
Yep.
Right. I think a lot of people go into it, but that comes back to having confidence because you've done the work.
Yep.
Right. If you've
Yep.
done the work and you know what you know,
Right.
you can go into it with confidence.
Right.
I'm interviewing with these folks, but I'm interviewing them. I'm
Yep.
asking them, listen, I have a father that's sick. I may have to travel.
Right.
I may have to go to Sierra Leone. What's the office policy? How often do we need to be in the office? These are
Yep.
questions I'm asking while I'm on interviews,
Right.
even though I needed that job.
Right.
But I knew the value I was going to bring to that organization, whatever organization was going to be. And this, like I said, I'm coming out of not being fully employed or gainfully
Yep.
employed for a year. And I still was interviewing these
That confidence,
companies.
yeah, that
because I still had the confidence. I knew
Yep.
what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I've been out of the space for 4 years.
Yeah, yeah.
But I still know what I have done.
Yep.
And the foundation that I built can still be applied in this space,
Right.
even though it's 4 years later. It might be with new vendors,
Yep.
but the objective is still the same.
Right. I mean, this kind of is going to bring me to the next point.
Yeah.
Education. So in terms of like kind of staying up to speed? Because I know you talked about that
Yeah.
when we initially started, like cutting edge in terms of like technologies and things like that within your space. Like,
Yeah.
how were you kind of staying above waters when it comes to like, you know, what you were doing like within the programmatic space?
Yeah, so I will say this, just in general, I spent $60,000 out of pocket on my own education in the last 15 years,
Nice.
right? So I
Yeah.
paid consultants, I paid for courses. Even though I told you that first $1,000 that I spent, once as soon as I got that consulting gig from the LinkedIn, I
Yeah.
was like, I'm buying courses.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
care if most of the course is BS.
Yeah.
If 10% of it I can gain something from
Yeah.
it, I'm gonna buy
You
the
can use
course.
that somewhere else.
I
Yeah.
could use it somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that YouTube and the LinkedIn piece, I don't remember the rest of it, but those two pieces, they stayed with me to today.
Yep.
So I spent, like I said, I spent $60,000 in courses, and that is not hyperbole. I have done the math. It's
Yep.
$60,000. And one time I spent $12,000 for this course that was mostly BS, but it introduced me to the consultant that I paid personally out of pocket $15,000 to.
Yeah.
And he's the reason why the e-commerce platform did what it did, because
Yeah.
he was able to walk me through step by step. I can't watch a video and do it. I need to be able to ask you specific questions for the
Yep.
thing that I'm doing. So I paid him. I reached out to him and paid him directly.
Yeah.
And so there's two things I would say about education. I had to actually implement what I was learning, right? So I took a course on how to run ads on Facebook. But I actually ran ads on Facebook. I didn't
Right.
just take the course and then just say
Not follow up with
goodbye.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually ran ads,
Yep.
and that's what taught me how to set up lookalike modeling and audience expansion and all the things that I was doing at Hulu.
Yep.
I was able to do that because I ran ads on Facebook. So
Yeah.
when I talked to Peloton and they're like, how come we can't do what we do on Facebook? Light bulb went off. I'm like, okay, why don't I just figure out how to replicate what we do on Facebook on Hulu?
Nice.
And I was like, okay, I go to different vendors. Can you do this, this, and this, and this? And I was confident asking, can they do those things? Because I ran ads on Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So
Yep.
it wasn't just learning; it was actually executing
Yep.
and implementing.
Yep.
And so I think that was really a big thing for me. Is the reason why I have that level of confidence is because I've actually done
Done
the
it.
thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I would say. I mean, and then of course, in the industry that I'm in, there are a couple of trade publications that send newsletters out daily. So I hate reading. I've mentioned this to you guys before. And by the way, reading is fundamental. Leaders are readers, so I definitely recommend you read or find a way to consume information.
Audiobooks.
I'm an audiobook listener.
Yeah.
I listen to podcasts from people that I respect and understand that they know more about the topic than I do and who cite their sources. That's another important thing. So I make sure that I do that. So I find a way to consume this content and this knowledge.
Yep.
But I do read those newsletters begrudgingly every morning because they don't have an audio version of it, unfortunately. So I do read those daily though. So yeah, I mean that's an important thing. I didn't do that the last 4 years while I was in Africa because I didn't expect to come back.
Yeah.
But once I came back, once I knew I was coming back, starting in January this year, I was regularly sign up for those newsletters and made sure that I was reading them, resubscribed because I had unsubscribed when I had moved. And so I spent some time learning about what was going on. And that's important too, because not only do you need to understand what you're doing in your day-to-day job, you need to understand what is happening in your industry on a daily basis, because that stuff can inform different things that you need to know about your day job.
Yep. Yep.
And so one of the things that I used to do at Hulu was white papers. This company buys this company. So I'd have to do a white paper and say, how does that impact Hulu?
Yeah.
So now, because I started working on those, I approach every acquisition, anything that's happening in an industry with that same kind of viewpoint. How would I write a white paper on this? I'm not writing a white paper because I'm not required to, but at least I know how does this impact different things. It makes me think about things differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so that was how I'd say I would stay abreast of what's going on, is that and as much as possible, spend a significant amount of time reading the trades and taking courses
Right.
and applying what I learned in those courses.
Yeah. No, I mean, really good points. One of my pastors that I used to listen to back in grad school used to say, chew the meat, spit the bones. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's like, it's garbage out there. That's
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
But if you can get small nuggets from even like the most garbage of courses,
Yep.
if that can stick with you and add value, that's going to bring 5-10%, whatever it is, and come down the line, then it's worthwhile. And I think a lot of times, a lot of folks like they'll listen to like couple of things that may be mostly garbage, but there's some things that have some truth behind it.
Yep.
Take that as the as a nugget that you've gotten from whatever
Absolutely.
that is, and ride that along. So I love the fact that you are a constant learner.
Absolutely.
Regardless of the challenges, you're a constant learner. So that's really dope. I
100%.
myself, I'm the same way. I don't like reading a lot. I do like reading when it comes to like the technical pieces, but like news and other things, like I'm more of a audio and a visual person. So
Yeah.
I will watch YouTube. I'll listen to it while I'm working. I can still code and listen. Like my ears still work well.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
I'll do that. So I think that to me is it's very important that you understand your weakness, but you're
Yeah.
also focusing on your strengths and maximize that. So that's really good.
Yeah, and the reason why by the way, the reason why I'm this vulnerable about the fact that I have a hard time reading is because I thought I was the only one. Like my mom used to be like worried. I was in remedial reading in eighth grade.
Yeah.
I was, and by the way, the people who were in that room, I cannot even tell you. I'm like, damn, am I this bad?
Yeah.
Like I was really doubting myself,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so many times when you're dealing with this stuff, you don't know that other people are going through
Yep.
it.
Yep.
So that's the reason why I talk about this so
Yeah.
often and so freely.
Right.
I'm also confident in what I know outside of the fact that I have a hard time reading.
Yep.
Right. So,
Yep.
but that's because of all the work that I've done.
Right.
For a
Yep.
long time, I wasn't confident in the fact that I had a hard time reading.
Yep.
And it was to my detriment.
Yep.
And so one of my tricks that I was talking about off camera was I started implementing this rule that if it takes 3 emails, there should be a meeting.
Yeah.
That's really because I can't read 3 emails. You're sending me 3 emails. I'm gonna be reading this for 25 minutes, and I still don't know what you said.
Yeah.
So at first, what I used to do is I would just call people. Like if you were in New York and you sent me an email, I'm like, I don't know, I don't know what this is. I have no idea what I'm reading. So I would just call them, and in 2 minutes, I got it.
Yep.
Or you set aside a meeting, 15 minutes, you got it.
Yep.
And so everybody's like, man, Joe's so efficient. Like this guy, he gets it. Meanwhile, it's because I couldn't read your email. You sent me an email that was like 4 pages long. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, like you're still successful. Like, and that to me is like your limitation doesn't have to be like your outlook and your outcome.
Agreed,
So I
100%.
think, yeah, I think a lot of folks, they look at their limitation as like, and that's their focus. That's what they hone in on. I'm not literally talking about the glass half water, half full, but just more so focusing on your strengths.
Yep.
And seeing that others, like you said, sharing the stories that, hey, this is kind of where I found challenges, but this is my focus right here, and I'm able to overcome because of
Yep.
X, Y, Z. And sharing your story. I know we talked about this when I first picked you up, where billionaires, there was a lot of folks publicizing there's a lot of black billionaires out there.
Yeah.
I work with couple guys who make 200 plus mil. And just hearing from them that they can do it, that encourages me like, oh yeah, I can do that too.
Right.
Like I started here, but I can, this is kind of my challenge. And they're not smarter than me per se. It's just
Right.
that they have more experience and they've kind of put in the work behind it. So
Yeah.
to me, sharing those stories, it's very, very important. And I'm glad that you're sharing yours, bro.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that point, because we talked about Roger Bannister.
Yeah.
So there's a guy. And look, I'm getting the years wrong, but you get the idea. So this for all of human history, nobody had run the mile under 4 minutes, or was it 5 minutes? And Roger Bannister did it. It was 5 minutes, under 5 minutes. So Roger Bannister did it, and 36 people did it the next year. So that's the whole idea of how representation matters, right? The understanding that someone else, you now know that you can achieve it because someone else has achieved it.
Yep.
And so that's super important. And I think that's why I like to tell my story, because other people who have been through it, I think you now know that you're not the only one,
Yep.
and you realize that you can actually find solutions for your problem. For those of you who are out there thinking that you have limiting beliefs because you think because you can't read, I always said my ambition outweighs my intellect.
Dope.
For me, I don't let my limited capabilities limit my beliefs about what I can do.
Nice.
Yeah. I mix metaphors up all the time. I say the wrong word. I don't know how to read.
Yeah.
Whatever. Doesn't matter.
Semantics doesn't matter.
It's not going to stop me from moving forward.
Yep.
And so, and I won't say I don't know how to read. Let me take that back. I can read. It's just very, very difficult. It's
Yeah.
going to take me to read a page. It takes me double or triple the time it takes someone else to read. So just to be clear.
Yep.
Maybe I should be more clear on that. I was a little hyperbolic earlier.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, it
completely
is difficult.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's difficult.
Right.
You guys don't know what it's like for me to read. It's like, it is like, like, I'm looking
Yeah.
at the page. I'm like, I can't. This is too much for me.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, I think it's really important. So that Roger Bannister story was like an eye opening experience for me.
Nice.
Because and that leads to the billionaire story, right?
Yep.
There was one billionaire. Now there's so many black billionaires,
Yep.
right? And even though that's not always the measure of success,
Yep.
it's just important to know that someone has achieved the thing and the result that you want to achieve.
Yep.
It makes you know that it's achievable,
Right.
right? Especially someone who looks like you,
Right.
right? That's the important thing, and that's the idea of why representation matters. When people talk about it all the time.
Right. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's just setting a mark.
Yeah.
So you resetting the meter. I know with the NFL, NBA, they talking about like resetting the bar, whatever
Yep.
that is. So
Yeah.
we're essentially talking about doing the same thing. So
Absolutely.
you have others who are like, oh, I've struggled with X, Y, Z, but so and so did this. Well, what if I can achieve this? And I think, especially for those who are in the continent now, with the challenges that you're facing, it's good to see and hear that others are able to overcome those.
Yep.
And that's my hope with this whole podcast. And I think the same thing with
Absolutely.
with yours when you're streaming, man. So that's
Yes,
dope, bro.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, so I know we're probably like way over time.
I talk a lot. You know that. You get
No, same here, man. Same here. But let's finish out like Sierra Leone, and then now you're back in New York, and then
Yes.
let's talk about what the next 5 years looks like for you.
Yeah. So I kind of breezed past it, but I spent about a year in Sierra Leone. 73 meetings to get 3 clients, 3 months max. So that was gone.
Yep.
Roles that I applied for wasn't able to get. Contracts, government, otherwise I was applying for or working on, wasn't able to get.
Yep.
Things that I knew that were going to take a lot longer to come to fruition. Some family loss, so losing some family members, and so costs associated with that. All of that culminated. Oh, take a step back. My laptop just burnt out. So all these interviews I had done all through end of 2022, early 2023, lost a bunch of stuff, a bunch of content.
Say locally.
Yeah, and so it was saved locally because the internet is so challenging.
I
couldn't upload it. I had 4 external hard drives that were full.
Dang.
And I was like, just when I get to Ghana, I'll buy an external hard drive.
Yeah, yep.
And the week before I went to Ghana, I moved into my new place, and I didn't have a step up, step down transformer.
Yep.
And it fried the laptop. And I knew it was going to cost me about $1,600. I'm like, it's going to take me like 5 months to make $1,600. I can't even, I cannot fix this laptop.
Yeah.
So that, and then a few other things. It was like one after another after another. I'm like, it's all telling me it's time that I need to make a drastic shift,
Right.
so that I can do this differently the next time.
Gotcha.
So not to bog you down with the details of all like the family stuff that happened, but a lot of family stuff happened that required additional income that I did not have at the time. I had to miss out on certain things like funerals and things like that because I didn't have the money to fly. Yep. So it taught me that I needed to be able to be it showed me that I needed to make a decision, and that decision was moving back to the States, going back to my old career, but instead of having the expenses that I had in my previous career, deploy that capital responsibly on the continent. Buy land, build, rent, Airbnb, do things that are going to generate income for me on the ground.
Yeah.
So what is the next?
Passively.
Passively.
Yep.
Passive income, stuff that requires very little overhead, right?
Yep.
So what do the next 5 years look like? It's exactly that. Continuing to do that, working to build up my skill set so that I can move into that next phase of the career that I want to move into.
Yep.
And also continue to develop the relationships that I had started to build while in Sierra Leone. So every time I go back, following up with those folks and meeting with them again, because even though I'm not on the ground, it still doesn't mean that I shouldn't continue to have those conversations, right?
Yep.
And so I realized that no matter what time is going to go by, so you might as well spend it, in a way that is going to be fruitful.
Yep.
And also too, I have to continue to build those relationships over time. It's not like just because I've been here and I care about the country and I have a platform doesn't mean they're just going to hand me a contract, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to need to develop those relationships with those folks, and that's going to take time.
Yep.
And so that's what the next 5 years looks like. Beyond that, buying more land. I think I mentioned that before. Continuing to work on Authentic African, operating with new revenue streams, bringing on new team members who understand things that I don't understand to help me expand outside of just what I've been doing on social media.
Yep.
and turning it into a business that can fuel a full-time income for myself
Nice.
while I also have those other assets that I'm building on the continent. So the two really is really where my focus is.
Nice.
And then while doing that, of course, continuing to build relationships so that I can get into the VC space, because that's something I still would like to do.
Okay. Okay.
Because I still want to work for a VC firm to see how a company deploys capital, how they look at a cap table, how they determine if they're going to give money or not, like
Yeah.
all those kinds of things. It's always good to kind of see it from the inside,
Okay.
and apply what I learned, whether that's interning or whatever. Like
Yeah.
I'm down to do it for free, because for me, I'm big on working to learn, not to earn.
Yep.
And so I'm happy to do that for free and just learn that process to
Yeah.
be able to then apply that to the next phase of my career. Because again, it's all about me building on my education and learning more, and being able to be able to apply that later on. So
Right.
so yeah, that's what the next 5 years looks like. I mean, in within the next 5 years, I'm back on the continent
Okay. Okay.
for sure, full time,
Nice.
with an arsenal now.
Yeah.
You know, like I've now taken everything I've learned from the first stint there for 4 years, almost a little under 4 years, and then the subsequent however many years, 5 years in the States again, and then I can go back now with a renewed sense of purpose and understanding about what I want to do and how I want to do it.
Nice. Nice, man. And the other thing that Joe hasn't really talked about is impact on like local talent, like from curating talent and being able to impart like his knowledge. I think that's extremely important.
Sure.
You know, we talked about how oftentimes, especially in Sierra Leone, a lot of Africans that leave their countries respectively, a lot of them don't look at going back.
Yep.
But the countries that are actually doing well, they have a strong diasporan like connection and impact, where they look at coming back and giving back and making sure that what they've learned they're able to impart. You know, simple story here. We were talking about just ChatGPT and how.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so yeah, to that point, I mean, you know, for me, right, I think I mentioned this. I had a woman from the Philippines that started helping me with Authentic African in the beginning of the Instagram page, and obviously it doesn't make sense for somebody who's from the Philippines to run Authentic African, right? To be to doing the post, doing the community engagement, so it doesn't make sense, right? So I had to start looking at people on the continent, and so I ended up hiring somebody from Nigeria initially, and then from her sister ended up working for me, and then through her I got 3 more folks. So, you know, I've definitely wanted to not only give these people orders like, here, just do this, do that, but also give them something that they can apply and learn elsewhere. So as you mentioned, ChatGPT, Perplexity, these are 2 consumer facing AIs that I use daily. You know, if I'm reporting on the news, I use Perplexity because it has the sources. Right, and you could just click on the sources just to make sure it's all right. And then I use ChatGPT to turn it into something that's usable as a description for Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, right?
Dope.
And so I have now taught those people to do that. I use Loom to record my screen. So I have taught other folks to use Loom to record their screen. Like just these tools that they haven't used. A friend of mine works for an advertising agency, and we use ChatGPT to do a script for a mattress company in Nigeria. Like these are all things that these people can apply to their everyday lives.
Exactly.
And actually helps them stand out as talent versus everyone else.
Exactly.
And hopefully they pass on that knowledge and information to other people, right?
Exactly.
So who knows how that 2 or 3 times I taught them the ChatGPT, whatever it was that I did, they can apply to other people. So So yeah, I mean, in fact, I did it in Sierra Leone. Actually, as a matter of fact, I had a conversation with somebody about their resume. And I had them redo their whole resume using ChatGPT.
Nice.
You know,
Nice.
so I showed them some prompts that I use, and they redid their resume. So these things are all part of what I really care about, and then even just building, right? Like as a person who's building a house, you're automatically employing like sometimes between 8 and 50 different people, depending on the size and scale of what you're building. So shouldn't take that loosely as if, you know, you're not really helping people. Like if you're building something, you're putting people to work, you know? And so, and for me too, it's also important to, again, I said I'm the king of unsolicited advice. When I'm talking to folks, I don't just yell at them. I tell them what they can do differently. Right? Because as someone who I had challenges while dating, you know, I used to get yelled at a lot by my ex. She's like, "How do you not know this?" You know, I was like, I don't know. I don't know why I don't know this. So, but what was effective with her was when she would say, you know, this is how you could have done it differently. So it's like it's no longer nagging, it's teaching.
Yeah.
You
Yep.
know, and I'm not afraid to learn
Yep.
from any
Yep.
place. You
Yep.
know, I the smartest people know they don't know it all.
Yep. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
And you know, I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson say that. You know, as smart as he is, he's like, there's a bunch of stuff I don't know. And he's like, and it keeps you curious.
Yeah.
And as long as you know you don't know
Yep.
everything, you're in a good place.
It's a good starting point.
Yeah,
You know.
it's a good starting
Yeah.
point for sure.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so for me, you know, if somebody does something that is not done the way it should have been done or the way I'd like it to be done, then I talk them through what they could do differently.
Right.
So for an example of that is this: when I was in Ghana, I asked the guy who was installing a water heater to come the next morning at 9 a.m. He said he'd be there at 9 a.m. He doesn't come till 12 the following day, right? So when he comes in, you know, this is Ghana, so I can't like yell at him, right? So I'm like, okay, so talk me through what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, I had this other client, it's a big client. I was like, okay, so understandable. Do you know that it would have been much better for you to just tell me you have
Communicate.
another client and you cannot come tomorrow?
Yep.
Do you know how much you would save in terms of screaming at you? Because I'm sure people are pissed off at you all the time because
Yep.
you keep doing this.
Right.
Just when it's bad news, early and often.
Right.
As soon as possible.
Yep.
As hard as it seems to tell the bad news, because if you say it earlier, we can work on a solution together.
Right.
And I'm not surprised by it.
Yep.
And so that's the conversation. Those are the kinds of conversations that I think, you know, it's like with, I want every person to leave me better than they met me.
Yep. Yep.
If there's one nugget, if it's something that I can do to make sure that they're positively impacted by my life,
Right.
that's my goal. And
Right.
so I felt like that's been my goal before I started going to the continent and before I moved.
Yeah.
But I feel like I feel more fulfilled by doing it on the continent.
Gotcha.
You know,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's I mean a big part of what I believe in and what is important. So when it comes back to that legacy conversation, right? When I was 25, my aunt's legacy, my grandfather's legacy, the impact they had after they were gone.
Yeah.
What is mine going to be?
Yeah.
What is the impact I have while I'm here?
Yeah.
You know, so and it's not just selfishly. It's like you feel good by doing it, but you realize how it helps other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been a big thing for me is figuring out how much I can add value to other people's lives, and I think because of that, I've had so much value added to my life too.
Nice. Nice, man. All right. So we'll close out with this. Give me like your five, like, you know, we talked about different investment vehicles. Like in 5 years, what are like your five investment vehicles you see yourself having?
Real estate, real estate, real estate, real estate, real estate. So I would say, listen, number one is real estate for sure.
Okay.
Here's why I say that. I have an investment in the United States that's probably it's gonna do really well, right?
Okay.
It's a house in somewhere. Well, whatever. It's in Seattle, right? So we bought this house in Seattle.
Yep.
Not too far from Microsoft or Amazon. Bought it for $4 and change. It's worth around almost 800 now.
Nice.
It's maybe worth be $1 million by 2026,
Yep.
which is great.
Yep.
But the amount of money I had to put down, had to go in with other people, lots of processes I had to go through.
Okay.
I remember a family member of mine bought land for $500, and 10 years later, it's worth $15,000.
Wow.
Right? So, yeah, it's not 50,000 and you're getting $1 million.
Right.
But like if you have 5,000
Yeah.
and if you can come back with 15,000 in 10 years,
Right.
like instead of buying a watch or a chain or
Right.
whatever, a couple of different things that you might buy,
Right.
and you just take that 5,000 sorry, it was 500. Sorry, it was $500. Sorry. It's $500 that became $15,000.
Yeah.
So you got $500 and you can put that into something and it ends up becoming $15,000. How many times would you do that?
That's crazy. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I bought land for $6,000, 5 acres of land. I know that each town lot, which is there's 50 town lots, will be worth $6,000 in 10 years or 15 years. I can't guarantee it, but the rate in which it has been growing.
Just history. Yeah. Just
Yeah,
looking at
I know
the
that that's
market
going to
history.
happen.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have two companies on either side of me
Yeah.
that are building something significant. One's a solar company, the other one is a hotel.
Yeah.
Right? So they're going to raise the property value maybe even faster than what I'm talking about.
Yep. Yep.
And so yeah, so that to me I think is the number one investment vehicle, number 1, 2, and 3, and all of it revolves around real estate to some degree. So
Okay.
that's for sure one. Two, Airbnb. Excuse me. I'm going to rent apartments and rent those out for Airbnb.
Okay.
Because if you think about this, just do the math on this, guys. And like I said, I don't do math in public, but I do easy math. If you spend $1,000 a month on rent, that means that the Airbnb needs to be filled 10 days a month at $100 a day to break even. Now, you may have some other costs associated with it. So let's say $11, 11 days. There are 30 days average in each month.
Yep.
I think you can fill an Airbnb for more than that. As long as you maybe take a course and learn how to do it. I've run Airbnbs before. I've been a super host, so I know how to do Airbnb. And I've also been in Airbnb in like 5 or 6 different countries as a guest. So I understand how to do a good Airbnb experience. So to me, I think it's a no-brainer. And I wouldn't be $1,000. It's like a $600 or $500 a month apartment, and then be able to charge $100 a night, right? So that means it only needs to be 5 nights a month that it needs to be filled. So just do the math on that, right? Just think about that. So of course I'll be doing that. Separately, I've looked at other things in terms of farming,
Okay.
right? So it's not really an investment per se. It's just grants that you can get by having land and farming on it.
Okay. This is
Right.
local grants or this is international or both?
Both,
Okay.
but mostly local.
Okay.
So in Sierra Leone, they have the Feed Sell Loan Project, right? And so they do give money to people for certain things if you follow certain criteria,
Gotcha.
right? And so why not get involved in that? I have 5 acres.
Yeah.
You know, so I have 5 acres of land that's just sitting there right now. So why not? So I'm in the process of doing some stuff there.
Nice. Nice.
And then also I can also sell locally some of the stuff that I'm growing to different people, right? But yeah, but it's mostly real estate.
Okay.
For me, it's real estate. One of my peer mentors, not peer mentors, so sorry, one of my mentors who recently passed, he bought a bunch of land in his 30s, acres and acres of land. And whenever he wanted to buy a new property or do a new investment, he could just sell like 5 or 6 town lots or an acre because he had like 80 acres.
Oh, wow.
So you want to just sell an acre? Fine. I got 79 more.
Yeah,
And and you can generate $100,000 from selling an acre.
Yeah.
Or even more than $100,000. So now he has that to buy cash, something else, or put a significant a deposit down.
Right.
So he put a significant deposit down on a building. Then he built another building. So he had two buildings that he connected for a hotel.
Yeah.
That when he first moved back to Sierra Leone or moved to Sierra Leone. And then he did the same thing at Reggie Manuel Estates, $400,000 house.
Wow.
He was able to pay most of it off just by selling pieces of his land. And so he would always tell me, just buy land.
Yeah.
And even if it doesn't appreciate in value, you're going to spend that money anyway. You might as well park it somewhere and just take the money right back out.
Yeah.
Why not? It's the same thing as an Isuzu.
Yeah.
The worst case scenario, you get back what you put in.
Right.
And who doesn't want cash later, even if you had it before? There are many people who had a lot of money before and are broke now.
Smart way to
and
save it,
would love to be able to get that money they used to have. Well,
Yeah.
if you put it in a vehicle that's maybe not making any money, but is just sitting there, you can sell it and get that money back. Why not?
Right. Right.
So for me, it's all real estate.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. So I want to make sure I recount this. Airbnb is one. You got the apartment. You got the farm. What was the other two?
Well, buying and selling the land,
Buying
right?
and
Just
selling, okay.
owning land and
Okay.
selling pieces of it,
Gotcha. Okay.
right?
Okay.
So right now I have 5 acres, 4 town lots, 2 town lots, the 3 different properties that I have.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
I'm going to Ghana, looking to buy some more land in Ghana.
Okay.
And also get an apartment that I'll rent out on an Airbnb basis. So, but yeah, so those are the different ways. I'm looking at other things, but they're a little bit more risky that I'm not just going to throw out there, like investing in startups and stuff like that. But I wouldn't throw that out there for people. What I tell people that I'm working on is stuff that I would recommend you do, right? So the biggest thing is buy land. There are some challenges with it, but it's the simplest thing you can do, and to see the return on it. It's so much more simple than investing in a business. So just do some research, understand what you're doing. But yeah, and by the way, and I didn't mention this, but the 2 town lots I have in Freetown, I'm building a 3-story, 3-family, multi-unit complex, right?
Nice.
So each of those will be rented.
Nice.
So the guest house will be rented. The first floor my mother's going to live in. The second floor, I am renting, and then the third floor I'll be renting. So the first floor is being worked on right now. Once the first floor is done, I can start renting the guest house because that's where I stay now. But once the
Okay.
first floor is done, I can stay in the first floor,
Yeah.
rent the guest house. That's a 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom that I can rent out.
Nice.
And I
Nice.
can Airbnb it, or I can do a long-term rental. I can decide. But yeah, so that's to me is going to be the number one investment vehicle for me is real estate. Okay, I get one thing I also mentioned too. I've also looked into intercity travel in Sierra Leone
Okay.
between Bo and Freetown.
Okay.
So buying like a Toyota Hiace,
Yeah.
but again, not a ton of money to make back.
Yeah.
It's just to have some money circulating in country. You know,
Gotcha.
you put some money into it, and you have money circulating in country, and so you have money in your bank account.
Yeah.
So you wanna access funds while you're there instead of accessing funds from a U.S. bank account. You can access funds while you're there.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Cool, man. Well, this has been a lot of nuggets. I would ask more questions in regards to like, diving deep, like the process of buying a house, but you literally have covered that over and over on your stream. So I'm definitely going to point you guys towards that because
Appreciate
literally, like all of his content is there where you can go find a lot of good nuggets, a lot of good information about that. So go check that out. So last but not least, if people want to get in touch with you in terms of like, you know, learning more about like, doing the move or just finding out, let's say for the ancestry piece, because you got some connections there.
Yep.
How can they get in touch with you, man?
Great question. So I would say this: if you want to follow what I'm doing, just look for Authentic African on all platforms. It's Authentic_African on Instagram. It's Authentic African on YouTube. Just look up Authentic African on TikTok. If you find it on those two places, just look for the same logo on TikTok and Facebook, Threads. I'm everywhere on all the platforms. We're there. If you want to speak to me directly, depending on what you want to talk about, if you have questions about your own specific move or something you want to do yourselves, you can set up a consulting call with me. The easiest thing to do is just send me an email. I will send you the link to sign up for a consulting call, and we can do a one-on-one consulting session.
Nice.
If it's a conversation like you and I had, you don't need to pay for a consulting session because we're about to come do some interview or something like that. If we're going to collaborate on something, that's different. But don't try to bait and switch me and get on the phone and start asking me questions. I will direct you directly to the consulting link.
Yeah.
Okay, so just to be very clear. But yeah, so it's just reach out to me. You can DM me or email me at AuthenticAfricanLife@gmail.com. That's the email right now that I have everything going to. So just email me there, and I will make sure that you and I can discuss whatever it is that you want to talk about.
Again, bro, thank you for doing this pod.
Absolutely.
I know it was last minute. I pinged you, but well, first and foremost, you're the first guy that actually flew down here, and then I picked you up.
Yeah.
We got to know one another, and then we're doing the pod now.
I appreciate you having me, man.
Yeah,
This has
yeah,
been great.
man. We're definitely gonna stay in touch.
Absolutely.
One because you're doing great things in the
Thank you.
content production stage, but also you're Sierra Leonean. We're gonna see each other.
That's right. That's right.
At some point in time back
Absolutely.
in Sierra Leone. I'm hoping this December we can catch up, but depends on what the wife says.
Well, I'll be there all month, so whatever happens, if you end up coming there, we'll definitely catch up in person for sure.
Cool, man. Well, thank you again, man. Really appreciate it. And then, in terms of any other contact information, just in case you forget, you can hit us up at africansintechnology@gmail.com. Again, it's africansintechnology@gmail.com. My name is Sar Levy, and this is Africans in Tech, where we're building bridges and shaping futures in tech. All right, fam.